Good evening, my name is Helen Anthony, I'm the chair of the Committee on Finance, and I'm calling to order our regular meeting. Excuse me. We're starting our meeting. On Wednesday, April 30th at 2025 at 5:33. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Chairwoman Anthony,
Present.
Vice Chairman Taylor,
Here.
Counselor Andujar, present, Councilwoman Graves, absent, Counselor Sanchez. We have 4 present and 1 absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you so much. I'd like to thank Ken Shelly for attending this evening's meeting. Thank you very much from the city solicitor's office. We have Councilor Vargas who's joining us this evening. We have our director of policy, senior director of policy, Peter Gardner, who's with us, and also a wonderful.
So noted.
Okay. Madam Clerk, would you please read agenda item number 1?
Resolution authorizing approval of the following change order number 2, contract award by the Board of Contract and Supply in accordance with the section 21 through 26 B4 of the Code of Ordinances. Marin Construction, $98,010, Department of Public Property.
Okay, and who do we have this evening? What? Hello, how are you? And how are you? Nice to see you. It's like, oh, she's the young record. Please state your name, so it's like that. Names inside the store.
Joe DeSanti, Director of Project Management, John's Construction.
John Rush Manning, City of Providence, Director of Public Property.
Well, thank you so much. Who will be presenting on that?
This is the Sandy. Easy.
Good evening, Madam Chair, committee members. So the change order match for number 2 for Marin Construction for $98,000 for both bicycles is the continuation of some work that we did there to complete the auditorium. If you recall, we did some additional work with the AV, the sound system, and the lighting as part of the second part of the phase 1 project for the renovation of the auditorium. As they were starting to do some operational training there, one of the things they determined, for example, there's a number of items to make up that 98,000. Was that they required an additional railing because they use that side door for public coming in and out of. That railing had never been there. It was a safety concern because it was more than 3 steps and there was a landing there. In addition to that, the control booth requires some conditioned air conditioning, because got very hot with all the electronic equipment. There was some wiring and conduit for a room in the back that they want to utilize as a changing room during performance. There was an old steam radiator. If you recall, we did the work there on the tan studio, and then it was something, the fault of steam line or something that ended up actually damaging a lot of the new work that we did there. So when we were there after they repaired all the work and the insurance company paid for it, we asked them to make sure that we go downstairs if there's any other issues with the steam pipe or any old cap lines, that they do it properly, and this was to do some of that work. In addition to that, there was for operating during for the kids and for the staff to operate during performances, they wanted a man lift so that in the back of the stage, they could have this lift that goes up, that moves lights around for performances. So they asked if you could purchase that. It's really a piece of furniture, fixture and equipment. There was some additional fire alarm repairs that were needed. And there was additional unused allowances that we had of about $75,000. So we used that $75,000 to offset the repair of the fire alarm, and then the remaining balance, which is the $98,000, which is remaining. After we have a little bit of money still left in that budget. The decision was made to utilize the remaining money that was in that contract. And our budget, I should say, include these items in here so that we got the proper operation of the auditorium and performances.
Mr. DeSantis, I asked if the insurance money that was saved as a result of this steam pipe failure, was that applied to this?
No, it was applied directly to the contractors that went in here and did the work, so we never saw a bill for it, and we never saw the reimbursement. The money went directly to the contractors that repaired it.
But didn't they pay for the damage that was caused?
They did,
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're just saying it brought it back to.
just brought it back to the renovated status that we had already.
Okay. And, is this gonna be the final for phase two?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, so then, and then we have to do more work in phase three, is that?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, all right. So that is, certainly much more than we would put back in there and, contract and supply, so I think. Are there any questions? Yes, Councilor Anderson.
Thank you for coming in tonight. I had a question about, you mentioned the railing, and I'm seeing the invoice here for the, like all the fire stuff, but I don't see an invoice for the railing.
I think it's the top line, and it's really hard to see. It says install 2-line galvanized railing. It's at the top.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's really
excellent.
difficult to
Okay, cool.
see.
Yeah, that was really small. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
Is that it for your
Yeah,
question?
yeah.
And,
Also, the pie is looking great. Yeah.
it is, but I have a question. Is the sound system working, properly?
Yes, and there's been ongoing training. There's been at least 2 to 3 different trainings that have happened on all the systems there, and I've checked in with the admin there. And everybody feels comfortable with operating it, and we have additional training, if they would like it as well. So our understanding is everything is working, and they're actually using it quite often.
Okay, and then the additional training, are they training by any chance? So if the city council comes in and uses the space, which both, Councilor Anderson and I do. Does our staff who comes in with us have to be trained, or are there people that are manning that?
I think there's people manning that, and we could talk to Adam or Maggie there.
Okay.
They would be probably the 2 individuals that I would talk to.
Okay. All right, thank you. I think that answers my questions on that. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Sanchez.
Thank you. Just to confirm, so this is we won't see anything else regarding, Hope High School phase 2
No,
going forward?
this completes the auditorium, the backstage area, all that work that was part of the second phase. We call phase 2. Really, the next phase is coming up as well.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
I make a motion, we approve number 1.
Second. Motion to approve made by Councilor Taylor, seconded by Councilor Anderson. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, thank you very much. And are you staying and discussing our, well, we'll wait until we read the agenda item number 2.
Resolution authorizing approval of the following contract award by the Board of Contract and Supply in accordance with section 21 through 26 B2 of the Code of Ordinances. Demio Construction Company, $35,558.75, Department of Public Property.
Okay. And before you start, I'm going to recognize Councilwoman Peterson, who is joining us. Okay.
So noted.
Very much. Okay. Please begin.
Again, I'm gonna let,
Well, this one, I think, is this the video for
It
the
is.
public property, I mean, for the DPW?
I'm sorry. This one is, apparently,
He was overseeing those two.
in 2020, apparently there was a, contract between Gilbane and, Studio J. That contract was terminated at a certain point.
Oh, that's for the,
No, we're on
three.
2, not 3.
Yeah, 1, 2.
Demio?
Oh, I'm sorry, okay. That was the maintenance cost during the real estate transaction that was done in 20 November of 23. The purchase of the BBW building, which is the Demio building. In that agreement, we were to cover the maintenance costs during the period of time that Demio occupied that building, which was a little over a year and a half. That was negotiated to the PPBA in November of 23. And after we left in March, we received that bill, that invoice. And that's for all the maintenance work that was during that year and 3 month period.
Okay, did the city have, did PPPA have a, was there a lease agreement between?
Yes,
Give me on.
yes, it was.
Provided with that, or was that a cat? I don't know.
Article 5, I mean, there's a full page lease, but I just copied Article 5, which is
Okay,
covering the cost of.
okay, I appreciate that, however. It doesn't have the police, to police, so who is this lease between? Well, I think we'd like to see the full lease.
Yeah, I have a copy of it. I have a copy of it.
We may continue this until we can see the full lease. As an exhibit. I mean, I appreciate the fact that we have people that are going to testify to this. I think it's rather critical that we see but if you, Ms. Lindbergh, if you think you can add to this, I can swear you in and listen to your testimony.
You swear on the council of president that testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please state your name and your title for the record.
Crystal Lindbergh, Deputy Finance Director and Budget Officer of the City of Providence. Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. You have a full copy of the lease. So this lease was executed directly between the Providence Public Building Authority, PPBA, and Dimeo. So it was not executed through the City of Providence procurement process as traditionally we would expect. And I think, one of the things that we are trying to clarify and codify with our new board and new chair are what those procedures are and how we will adhere to the city's procurement policies going forward. And the matter in front of us now is one of our steps in the direction to rectify the processes that had been in place prior to the new board being onboarded and the functional administrative changes that the finance department has taken on so that we can start recording and managing these transactions in a much more transparent way.
Okay, I do appreciate that, Deputy. I mean, this is the second time I think we've been recently. The one thing, I have no idea whether I'm going to have PPPA has the authority to lease property. So and then the fact that all this happens outside of our normal course of business here makes this absolutely impossible. As members of, as the chair of finance, to have any kind of action on this. So I mean, and then, then they come back and ask for us to cover the bill, and it's just, this just isn't right.
I completely agree, and that is part of why this matters before the board now. I would say under the previous chair and under previous administration on the city side of this is something that would not have even been presented to the Board of Contract and Supply, which makes me personally very, very uncomfortable. I think one of the things that the city and PPBA need to do is sit down with the city solicitor's office, perhaps the lawyer for the PPBA, and really define what the roles, responsibilities, and authorities are of the PPBA. I know the city solicitor had written a memo back in 2020 that kind of defined their authority, which in his opinion at that time was very broad. And so some of the protocols that we're putting into place now are going to be challenging both for the city and these vendors. However, one of the things I would like to also clarify is that this is not being paid out of city general funds. This is being paid out of PPBA bond funds.
And so while they did make a commitment of utilizing those bond funds, at that time, under that chair, they believed they were within their rights and authority to do that.
I am going to, I'm gonna ask my committee members to weigh in and also to ask questions or express your opinion on this. Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the explanation, and Deputy Director, thank you. I have two questions. So one, I just want to clarify something you just said, since, only Chairwoman has a copy of the lease. Is this to pay? Who's paying this? Because it's coming from the Director of Public Property. But like, what entity would actually be paying this $35,000 bill?
PPBA, so the bond was issued under PPBA's authority. The checking account and bond account is in Providence Public Building Authority's name and associated with their tax ID. So the physical check will be cut from their bank account.
And I'm sorry, this is an awkward question, because is the PPPA, is anyone from them here? No.
They are not here today.
Because you mentioned that this contract was signed, many years ago, but with that, so a couple years, 2 years ago, with the lawyer for the PPBA, do we know who reviewed it for them? Because the concern I had last time, which I'll just say again, was there were like plenty of conflicts of interest between their lawyer and the folks that they were signing contracts with. And I would just feel really uncomfortable if they were also representing Dimeo at the same time, which is what happened last time.
I fully agree with that sentiment. This was signed by Ron Crossan, who was the chair of PPBA at the time. He is no longer the chair as of recently, and it was witnessed by, I believe, Mal Salvatore, who is the legal representative of PPBA and is not associated with the attorney that you are thinking of with the other matter. Mal Salvatore is general counsel to PPBA and has been general counsel to PPBA, I think, since their inception. So this would have been a matter that he would have reviewed a contract for. With that said, you know, what the former board chair had done to negotiate this agreement is not something I would have been privy to. Again, one of the things I'm trying really hard to do is clean up and provide transparency for some of these transactions that were less than transparent. And it's an uncomfortable process to get through, but I think it's the right thing to do.
I appreciate all your work on this too.
My last question, sorry, do you have anything to say or add?
Just a comment, definitely share the concerns. Thank you, Crystal, for your comments on this matter. The last thing that we had before us regarding the Providence Building Authority was also concerning. And I guess one of my bigger goals coming out of that was to not be in the same position. So I fully trust that you're doing your best, but is there anything else pending that we might see that?
Not at this time. If I'm being candid, the books and records that were kept by PPBA were not in a fashion that I would consider to be adequate. So there is a lot of fact finding that we are still doing. With that said, we have a tremendous relationship with the new chair, who is also very uncomfortable with how the board had been previously run. And we are having working sessions to figure out new procedures and protocols so that we can follow all the things. And I have the utmost certainty that these sort of things will not continue to happen. What I cannot promise is that something will not come out from the woodwork that we haven't found yet that had happened prior to these changes going into play.
Can you remind us who the new chair is?
Her name is Nicole Pollock.
Oh, it's Nicole. Oh,
Yes.
great. Oh,
Yes.
fantastic.
Yep, and the vice chair is Matthew McCleary, who is also a wonderful commissioner.
Yeah.
And so I've been working with the both of them to kind of help fill out like what sort of roles and responsibilities they need on their team, how we will codify procedures so that we can ensure all projects are being publicly bid, running through our board of contract and supply, ensuring that every project has a PO that is cut through the purchasing department so they can ensure those procedures are in place. We've created a whole new accounting string so that we can account for these things in our ERP system. So a tremendous amount of work has gone into this, and you will see a lot of that work when we review the CIP presentation. You look through the budget book and you see that just the format of how we're presenting the capital improvement plan has changed dramatically. While these things make me uncomfortable and while these conversations are uncomfortable, I think it's important to have them to understand what has happened in the past and why we need to make changes in the future towards a more transparent process.
When can we expect, and are we going to be consulted on the regulations? I just wonder if these projects are gonna be bid through the Board of Contract and Supply going forward.
Certainly, so I have had a commitment from the PPBA team, and I've talked to all of our project managers that they are fully on board with bidding everything through the Board of Contract and Supply. However, once that plan is codified and finalized and adopted by that board, I would be happy to work with this team to present it to the Finance Committee as well.
I would love that. That would be great, because we have a great deal of concern about what's going on in there, especially if we're presented with this, which. Okay, I understand where you are with the process. I'm just hoping that we, that we're gonna have new plans and procedures put in place. I understand the fact that basically they're coming in and doing, I would imagine, some sort of audit.
That's what we've been doing for the past few months. Yes, I have a wonderful budget analyst on a team who's dedicated to capital projects, who's helping me kind of untangle what has happened in the past. Again, the records were kept, a lot of them directly by PPBA, so we don't necessarily have access to that information. But all of the work that is being done for these bond dollars are being done by project managers who are employed by the city of Providence. And I am regularly in contact with those project managers and have made it very clear to them that regardless of who is signing the check, they need to follow the Board of Contract and Supply procedures.
All right. Any other questions, comments, any action? Or motion? Not sure we're gonna get any more information on this.
Make a motion to approve.
I guess I wanted to ask the chair, what are our options?
Well, if we,
Move without recommendation?
I think this
Is this paid already?
This has not been paid to my knowledge.
City solicitor, or solicitor, what are?
I think you can approve it and go forward with the caveat that there's gonna be changes and a whole new process on the forefront, and that'll, this committee will be apprised of those changes. I think if you don't pass it, it just languishes and there's no payment made.
Right. And the work has been done. Probably a good case, right?
And two, and should it be litigated, I think we're responsible for it.
That's very helpful, thank you. Okay. Okay. The motion is made by Councilor Taylor, seconded by Councilor Andrew, all in favor, aye. All opposed? All abstentions. Thank you, we really did help, thank you very much, but I'm just gonna say, if we're presented with a portion of the lease next time, that isn't gonna work, we need the whole lease. Madam Clerk, please read item 3.
Resolution authorizing approval of the following contract award by the Board of Contract and Supply in accordance with section 21 through 26 B2 of the Code of Ordinances. Studio Jade, $378,527.25. Department of Public Property.
Okay. Is this, I'm sorry, is this handout the memo?
Yeah, so I created a memo with some background on it, and then a little background information attached to it as well.
Okay, I'm gonna mark it before you start. I mark that says exhibit 1. We have a motion.
Right.
Motion made by Councilor Anderson, seconded by Councilor Taylor. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, thank you for preparing the memo.
Thank you. So this approval is for Pleasant View Elementary School and for Classical High School, and these are for architectural services, but not design services, but construction administration services. So a little background, in 2020, August of 2020, Gilbane, Studio J were awarded a design build contract to do the Classical, Pleasant View, Reading, and Hopkins projects at the time. The project were designed and approved by Gilbane and Studio J and bid in late 2021 and early 2022. The bids that they received exceeded the project budgets by over $10 million. which was pretty significant. At that time, we were bidding other projects that we were very comfortable with awarding. And during that time, this was the previous administration that was overseeing it and the previous directors at the public property. In discussions with them, the city had decided to rebid the project as a general contractor. So that delivery method is a little bit different than a design build. That means the contractor acts alone and you have to have a separate architect overseeing the contract administration. Now, all the contract documents were done 100%. They had gone to RIDE, they were approved. We just didn't have both sides of the team. We did bid it out. We were very successful and we got both bids came in actually under the budget or right at the budget. So the delivery method worked. But then we were met with the challenge on who was going to do the construction administration. So Downs and the city at that time reached out to numerous architectural firms to see, would you be willing to oversee another architect's design? And there was no firm that was willing to come forward because of the risk with their insurance. When an architect oversees and approves drawings, they need to certify it, and more importantly, they become the architect of record. And with somebody else's design and building brand new buildings with a lot of steel and everything, they all felt very uncomfortable. So the city actually asked us to work with Studio J, who was the original architect of record and had those approved drawings to RIDE to provide us with the services. And then actually previously, the city had paid them up through June 5th of 2023 through the Board of Contracts for part of those CA services. At that time, we worked with them to say, we want to understand what the full services was going to be. We wanted to make sure we got a certificate of substantial completion as well. And we asked for them to wait and pull all their bills together at the end. And this is what the culmination of what that is. And just for a little background of what construction administration services really means, I gave you some information with that. Some of it has to do with request for information. So when someone looks at a drawing and they need to understand like why a door is not working, they would submit a request for information. The architect has to respond. That architect would look at shop drawings, submittal. So when they're putting the steel together, there's a shop drawing that gets submitted that has to be reviewed and approved by a professional engineer to ensure that it's structurally sound. And there's some examples in here as well. They perform site visits and observations, so they go there and make sure that the proper products are being installed. They administer any change work. They review and request for payments, and they actually have to certify that AIA document. And probably one of the most important things is substantial completion. So at the end of the project, contractually, the owner has to accept the building. In order to do that, an architect has to certify that the building is substantially complete for its intended use. And there's a very specific document. Not only is it important contractually, but RIDE requires it before they will reimburse one dime on it. We need a certificate of substantial completion. So all these, including one thing that I didn't have on here, that's a punch list, right at the end of the job, they come in and they go, wait a second, that wall still needs to be done. They also help to administer that as well. So there's a lot of work that they did behind the scenes that encompasses that $378,000 between the two projects.
Okay. I certainly understand the significance of the job that Jay performed. I'm a little confused again about the initial, so has Jay been paid at all for the work they did?
They did it, the initial about 90,000 initially, and this is the remainder of their contract of $278,000.
Okay, and we'll that cover the work covered what schools are gonna.
The 90,000 covered, exactly. It was classical 61,835, Nathaniel Green 8,000, and Pleasant View 25,000. And that went through the Board of Contracts at that time in June 5th of 2023.
Okay. And at that point, were they separated building and separated at that point?
Yeah, we worked with the city to dissolve that contract because we did not want to continue with the design build because they were $10 million over budget. So we couldn't just keep one partner of it. The contract was actually with Gilbane. They brought Studio Jade
I
in.
see what you're
Yeah,
saying.
so we had no choice but to dissolve that contract and then have to rehire them under a separate contract.
Okay, all right. Any other, that's a good explanation. Yes. Councilor Sanchez.
So just to confirm, Gilbane did the actual construction for Pleasant View and Classical?
They did not. Gilbane, when they went out, they did the swing space for Classical initially. And then the work was stopped at that point because they bid out the actual construction of Classical and Pleasant View. And that's where when they came back and they presented what there would be, their guaranteed maximum price was 10 million over our budget on those projects.
So who did the construction?
Construction for Classical was by Agostini and at Pleasant View was by Marin Construction.
So none of the original contract of the build design was implemented in 2020?
The only part that was implemented was the swing space at Classical. They built a temporary swing space in Classical. There was no work done at Pleasant View at all. And that was a small $4 million worth of work that they did to install the swing space so that we could move the kids around during the renovation process.
Yes, Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, and thanks for the explanation. I have a few questions, because I don't think I'm fully understanding this timeline, and it might just be ahead of one day. But, who was the architect? So you said that it's hard to find an architect who'd be the architect of record to oversee because of the insurance reasons. Who was the architect who Jade was overseeing?
Studio Jade was the architect. So
Oh,
Studio
so-
Jade was working with Gilbane. They were hired by Gilbane. They designed all the documents. They got them 100% approved by RIDE. They bid it, and then Gilbane bid it to the subcontractor market, and that's when it came back $10 million.
Oh. And then, do we ever do this process with the general contractor model with other projects?
No,
Can you talk a little more about that?
we
'Cause it
are
seems
not,
like what-
and I'm glad you brought that up. Is that we do not like that model. It worked here because those projects were already 2 years delayed when we were first brought on. And then they were further delayed because they were 10 million over budget and COVID, and there was a lot of things going on. We were very fortunate. We hit that market just right. We got a really good price on. We don't think we got it. General contractor method is actually, we don't prefer that method. We like the design build. So a perfect example is I always use the water fountain as my example. If you have a drinking fountain on a general contractor, if there's a drinking fountain there and there's no water line, they don't own the water line at all. They own installing the drinking fountain. And they own only what shows on the drawings. So that means they would come back and say, you gotta give us a change order for the water line, right? On a construction manager at risk or a design build construction manager, they own the intent of it. So if that drinking fountain's there, we assumed you knew that you had a water line there. It's your responsibility to carry that in your cost.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, the general contractor is anything that doesn't show on that drawing. They come back and they could ask for a change order.
Do you have a sense of why when you bid it out the first time, it was 10 million over, and then when it was bid out again, it was just like a change in the market or the?
I think it was a change in the market and change in subcontractors and contractors. I think it's really what it was. We were very active in the market and helping to bring in other contractors to bid it. And subcontractors as well, and I think that really helped, because we ended up having new subcontractors that typically didn't do work in Providence, and that helped bring the price down. And I'm happy to report, a lot of those subcontractors are now bidding and building a lot of the new projects too.
Oh, that's great. Okay, those were my questions.
Okay, all right. Anything else?
I can make a motion to approve number 3.
Second.
All right, motion to approve made by Councilor Taylor, seconded by Councilor Ingersoll, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed. We really appreciate you coming in, no, how busy you are.
Thank you, good evening.
Thank you, Director. Okay, now we are going to move on to the budget. I have a motion to, waive the reading of agenda items, 4 through 8.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion made by Councilor Sanchez, second by Councilor Taylor, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed. And so tonight, we're going to do, the police department and telecommunications.
All those that testify in good standing, be sworn in. Madam Chair, you take, telecommunications first, or?
Yes, if that's all right. I've seen that I think it's gonna be substantially shorter, sorry, police chief.
Thank
Please raise your right hands. You swear on the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Please state your names and titles for the record.
Lawrence Mancini, Chief Financial Officer, City of Providence.
Sarah Slitter.
David Rackles, Director of Telecommunications.
Thank you so much. And before we begin, I think I'll ask for a motion to mark the communications presentation as number 7. Okay. Motion by Kate, by Councilman Linderbaugh, seconded by Councilor Taylor, all in favor? Aye. All in favor. Well, thank you so much.
Good evening, members of the committee. We're here tonight to discuss the Department of Telecommunications. They are included on budget book pages 216 through 218. The numbers begin on page 217. I'm joined today by David Radcliffe, our director, our newly, somewhat newly appointed director of telecommunications. Congratulations.
Thank you, Madam.
Okay, so on to slide 2, this is a revenue generating department. Fiscal 2026 revenues are budgeted at $750,000. That is level funded with the fiscal 2025 budget of $750,000. This revenue is derived from master alarm firebox fees, which are about $500 or are $500 per box and are billed annually. Total expenditures in the telecommunications department are $11,815,154. This is a $699,438 increase over the fiscal 2025 budget. And in the next slide, we'll dig into the details of what makes up those budgetary changes year over year. Fiscal 2025 salaries were budgeted at $4,962. This department had cost of living increases of $132,753. Step increases of $4,842. In 2025, fiscal year 2025, there was an MOA executed with Local 1033 that brought up the salaries for the control center operators and customer service reps. The cost of that MOA in the fiscal year 2026 budget is $159,641. Additionally, throughout fiscal year 2025, the department had determined that they could more readily utilize a radio repair technician. And so they reallocated the funding from a vacant telephone technician position to a radio repair technician position. And I'm sure the director would love to explain why that was a critical move for his department. Additionally, in fiscal year 2026, there is one defunded customer service operator. The salary associated with that position is $54,277 for total fiscal 2026 salaries of $207,298.
Yes, did we save our, oh, I think we stop here. I have a couple of questions after others do too. The MOAs, can you tell me why that was drafted after you two?
It is my understanding that that was at the request of Local 1033. That MOA was executed directly between the Department of People and Culture and the union, so finance was not involved in the why behind that memorandum of agreement.
Did you say ACT?
No, people in culture.
All right, and what year was that?
It happened in fiscal year 2025.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if you would, director, if you would mind talking to us about if you have anything to add on the MOA, but also the defunding of these two positions.
Yes, absolutely. So with the MOA, I think the idea there was to make the position more competitive in the market. It is a call center operator position, so it is our entry level position to get into telecommunications, and we do have some turnover in that role. And a lot of the other call centers that are out there now for private entities and things are raising their rates to get folks in. So I believe that was the sort of driving force behind 1033 requesting that, initially. In regarding the telephone technician, so right now, we have one telephone technician, but a lot of what that individual does has been streamlined quite a bit. Through Cox Communications, we don't use desk phones as much as we used to, so there's a lot less calls for service to deal with desk phone lines. So the bulk of the work was now more based on the radio technicians. There's a lot of preventative maintenance we do now on the systems as it gets older. And the fortunate thing is the telephone techs and the radio techs do work together. So if one has a big project, they'll help each other out and that they're all in the same division downstairs. The reason it's more important to put someone in the radio technician role is it is more technical and hands-on. They do have to learn electronic skills, a lot of small tools, diagrams, things of that nature. So it does behoove us to have a person in that role so that they're trained and upskilled to the appropriate level to assist with all the duties down there.
So just to confirm, the telephone technician position was defunded and then the funded the radio repair technician, so then that was an increase of 1,474.
That is correct. That is the difference between the two position salaries.
Okay, and what about your defunding of the customer service officer?
The customer service operator is the switchboard operator. We used to have 3. We've since gone to 2, and the operations have been running perfectly fine at 2. We do coordinate a lot more with 311 and some other folks that have streamlined parts of that process as well, made it more efficient. So at this time, I think it was cost savings that made sense.
And I'm sorry, you had 2 and now you have 1.
We yes, one of them is bilingual, so they have a slightly different. So there's 2 folks.
I see, I see. Okay. Yes, ladies, time, we're gonna go. Thank you.
And thank you, and congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Can I ask another question about the MOA? Is there a reason if it did cause an increase in the budget of $160,000, why that wouldn't have come before like this committee at any point?
Unfortunately, ma'am, I'm not familiar with all the finer points of that. I can't answer that, but I can follow on it.
Okay, that'd be great, just to know, specification, I mean,
Yes, certainly. We can follow with the Harvard local John.
thank you.
So Santa.
Yeah, I have some more questions around, I guess, like, I'm guessing those control center operators were part of the union.
They are, yes, they're members of local community.
So like was there an active, what do they call those? COBs, collective bargaining, CBA, was there an active like CBA and?
Yes, so there's an active CBA, but periodically throughout a fiscal year, the union may approach the city with changes in a certain employee's compensation due to a variety of factors. And this was one of those instances.
It just seems, I guess, just speaking out loud, it seems kind of silly, I guess, for finance committee to not be involved at all in CBA tweak, I guess you could call it. I'm just thinking out loud, I guess we should look at our policies about the.
We also might have some comments by possibly a solicitor.
Well, typically, if there are agreements that have been incorporated when the contract does come before you, there'll be a number of agreements that will then be incorporated into the contract that have been entered into during the life of the contract. So the next time the 1033 contract comes before you, there'll be these agreements that will be attached to the contract and incorporated. Historically, the council has not been part of contract negotiations. It just, for any of the collective bargaining agreements, it's too burdensome to have 15 members involved. And historically, administration will update the council when negotiations are going on.
So just to follow up on that quickly, there must be something in that CBA that allowed this to happen in middle of the CBA being active.
I don't know the particular agreement, but generally, yes, and if there are agreements, they're typically, entered into and then brought to the council, like I said, after. When the contract is negotiated and before you. So next time you'll see an agreement, it'll be before you. And next time you see a collective bargaining agreement, it'll be before you with those agreements.
And just like, it's not really a question, just a thought, I guess, is, yeah, I just wanna know. I guess like what's the protocol procedure, like. Say like the police department wants to negotiate their CBA. In middle of their contract, like what allows that or what?
So in that instance, if the city or one of the parties says, hey, something's wrong with the contract. They can send it's all by statute, but they would send a letter. Typically, how the letter comes a certain period of time before the expiration of the contract. But if it was a reopener, it would be a letter to say, it would typically come from the employer to say, hey, we can't afford the pay raises and whatnot. Send a letter to the union and ask to bargain. There's no requirement for the union to say, sure, we'll sit down and bargain. It can happen, it has happened. Some years ago, the administration under Mayor Cicilline attempted that in the local 1033. The party sat down, couldn't come to an agreement, they walked away and then waited till the contract expired. So there's no obligation for either side to come to an agreement. There's usually an attempt for whatever reason, so they can't afford to pay the pay raises. And there'll be a discussion, but the union walks away, the city's still obligated.
Thank you.
And thank you very much.
Yeah, sure.
Solicitor Severini. I'm gonna ask, also that a director of policy talk about, historically how we keep that rental amendments. It's where you went. I think we should. I'm sorry, we're gonna have to swear you in.
Please raise your right hand. Please swear on the penalty of perjury that testimony you're about to say is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And please state your name and your title for the record.
And Mr. Gardner, the agency for the policy of the council. And my simple comments would be that just historically, in my experience here in the city, obviously, like I'm saying, like the bargaining, whether it's local 1033, whether it's a FOP, the council does have the final say in ratifying it after, being negotiated by the administration. But with everything that's being said here, I can't understand why an amendment would also follow that same process. That's all I can say to that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Chair, can I just add, just because I was involved in this?
Yes, you're all going to swear you in.
Thanks, sorry.
That's
Sorry.
okay. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear on the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
And please state your name and your title for the record.
Emily Ward, Gold, and staff. I just want to provide a little bit of background. So when this administration first took office, the union had a list of positions that they believed were not comparable or competitive to other positions or had taken on other duties. And so before we took on negotiations of the new contract, there were a few positions, including CCO, which were on the lower end of our pay scale and high turnover, that they thought needed to be addressed, and that weren't going to be addressed within the negotiation process. So I don't want to speak on behalf of the Department of People and Culture, but they had done this MOA prior to starting negotiations with the understanding that nothing collectively would be taken care of. They're going to review, I know as part of the process, as to where we landed with all the other positions in the city. I know there was some urgency even before this administration took office on some of these positions. It's not uncommon if there's a change of duties or a change of job description, which may result in a change of pay depending on the person that it's in, that MOAs like this would happen. And so in my time in the city, in my different roles, I've seen lots and lots of MOAs. They might be specific to a human, they might be specific to a position, and some of them sunset over time. And so sometimes we encounter them from times in the 90s or 2000s. And so this is not an uncommon practice, but some things this whole scale, I'm happy to have people at Department of People and Culture brief you on the details of what those changes or what drove those changes for the positions.
Okay, yes, Councilor Vanderwall.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you get a copy of the MOA?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and I'd also request if we could, the CBAs.
Yeah.
Sure.
They're all online.
Yeah,
They're all online.
And within the department,
They're all online. I'll get you the actual links. They're PDFs of the
Yeah,
document.
that's all we need. We don't need more to come more trees.
Yeah, I got you.
Thank you very much. And but the MOA is not the online, is that correct?
I don't think so. I'm gonna look right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, I think we've discussed the MOA. Okay, any other questions on salaries before we move to the next? Oh, yes, Counselor Ingersoll.
And I guess, maybe it's not that, it isn't that, because it relates to total salary. Well, under CPO, the control center operators, on the org chart, we have 21 listed, and then in the really helpful document that you made again, so thank you so much, Commissioner. I'm so glad we made these. One of those positions is vacant. So are you planning to fill that, or is that an additional savings? This was this was part of the.
So, that vacant position is intended to be filled. These positions, when left vacant, generate callback and overtime at a pretty substantial rate. So it is in the city's best interest to try to keep these positions staffed with full-time employees as much as possible. Unfortunately, as a director of criteria and our chief of staff, there is a tremendous amount of turnover in this department, so managing that is a challenge.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Counselor Peterson.
Thank you. Hi, guys. Thank you for being here. I just have a couple of quick questions with regards to. Well, first, just to follow up what you had said, so why is there so much turnover for this particular position?
It's a very stressful position. These people are talking to folks on the phone that are often in a very, very bad situation. I've listened to the calls, I've sat in with these people, it is a very taxing career. Some people will just not go out for it. And also, as noted earlier, I mean, if you can listen to people dying on the phone or go help somebody fix their cable for the same amount of money, most people wouldn't go help somebody fix their cable. So that's one of the issues, but what we are investing in the department is human capital. It's a big thing for me and my partners in the administrative side. Training and development, talking. We recently worked around critical incident stress management team because our folks didn't have access to that prior. And I coordinated with them, so they now have 24/7 access to critical incident stress support for emergencies. And different things like that will help. And I think just our leadership style is from the front of both leadership style, which will help turnover as well. Guaranteed.
Yes, please go right ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate you mentioning that. I was actually gonna be my follow-up question because I think it's extremely important to make sure that there's a way to create longevity in these stressful positions. So good job. My question is around, and I'm hoping that you can clarify something for me. Oftentimes, when a constituent first tells me that they've called the non-emergency line, they've explained that it was a dispatcher or it was actually the police. And one of the things that we're trying to figure out, or at least I'm trying to figure out because of just some of the feedback that my constituents have given me, is where does that changeover happen? Would you be able to kind of explain, like, are the police officers the ones that are answering the non-emergency line overnight, or is it?
Overnight, we answer that.
Okay,
It's difficult because the phone generally will ring in our office after it's rang and during normal business hours. A clerk could answer the phone or the desk sergeant. It really depends on what line they get through on at the police station. But after hours, it comes to us. And a lot of times we have to transfer calls to the municipal court or to the police department from us, even on the emergency line. So it is kind of a menagerie of calls.
so, sorry.
Yes, please go ahead.
So, on an 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. schedule. If a constituent is calling the non-emergency line, it really doesn't, there isn't like a strategic process of who they're gonna get, it's just whoever answers the phone.
I could follow up with my phone technician and let you know definitively, because I think the way it works, my understanding is when you call the non-emergency line during the day, if there's a person, for example, the clerk, it will ring there and they can answer it. But if it's not picked up by so many rings, it comes to us. And at a certain time of the day, which I believe would probably be 5 or 6 p.m., it switches over to us.
Okay.
And through the overnight hours, it comes directly to us. Okay. But I believe it's a certain number of rings not picked up.
Just to push on that a little bit more, is there data that can be provided to say how many times, if in the middle of the day, if there's a certain amount of rings that are happening and people aren't getting picked up on, that it has to switch over to you guys? Is there data to kind of analyze that particular piece?
Not that I'm currently aware of, but I can follow up and see.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
When we talk police, I'll elaborate a little bit more, but I'm just trying to understand certain parameters that some feedback that constituents share with me when we're in meetings. As a matter of fact, I believe the mayor was at the last one that we did. One of the things they shared was, we are not exactly sure when we make a phone call, kind of where it goes. Sometimes people show, sometimes people don't. So we're never really, and so that's what I'm trying to understand. That's it. And then I have one more. Thank you. This is not so much related to telecom or police or anything, but what I'm trying to understand is all of these, and I just use public safety as an example, just because this is what we've done for the past 2 days. I want to understand the city of Providence pension expense on all of these. There's a really big differential between departments, and I kind of just want a baseline understanding. If you could explain this a little bit to me.
Yeah, certainly. So, as I previously mentioned, employees are broken into 2 groups. We have Class A members, which are non-sworn personnel, and then we have Class B, which are sworn personnel. The pension benefits negotiated for sworn personnel are significantly more generous, or have been significantly more generous in previous terms. And as a result, the actuarial cost of those pensions is significantly more than the actuarial cost of a Class A pension, which is receiving a lower benefit. And so when we do that allocation and we build out the budget, we receive a report from the actuary that breaks down our total payment, and it says the city of Providence is responsible for X number of dollars, the school department is responsible for Y, water supply board Z. And then on the city side, they break it down even further for us. They tell us how much of the pension contribution is for Class A, how much of it is for Class B fire, and how much of it is for Class B police. So we then take those numbers and utilize that to build the budget. So to your point, yes, those pensions are extremely high. And if you look at the trends in, I think oftentimes we look at the trends of investment in public safety and people lump that pension cost in. But I think one of the things that's really important to remember when we're talking about our pension is the bulk of our payment relates to pensions for individuals that have already retired. So it is not the current employee class that is contributing to that large payment. I believe for the latest valuation, had we not had those legacy costs that were unfunded in the 90s, our payment would be between $14 and $20 million a year, not 97. So the vast majority of what we're paying for annually are commitments that were made by previous councils and mayors and administrations, and then not funded by those folks. And the city is now picking up the burden of those decisions.
I appreciate that.
But Madam Chair, and to piggyback on that, historically, it predates the Home Rule Charter. So 1923, they established the Retirement Act. And those benefits that are more generous for public safety it's a historical thing that, we wanted to reward police and fire, the dangerous job. And at the end, if they received an accidental disability, there was a death benefit. They would outside of the death benefit, the disability, they would never work again. Things have changed dramatically over the years. So police and fire are able to work and get other jobs even with disabilities, and they get a significantly better benefit that was historically from the 1920s, and then going forward. More difficult job generally, and those benefits have historically been more generous than the other folks.
I appreciate the understanding. Thank you. One last question, I promise you.
Plus, also, let me add something. Police and fire over the years have paid more into their pension than the other people, correct? Yeah. It's like paying,
Typically, the contribution is higher, and it's significantly higher now with the recent contracts.
right.
They're significantly higher.
Thank you. My last question. Who takes out your trash?
We have a laborer, named Roger, that does our daily maintenance, and then a dumpster.
Do you know the dumpster company that you use?
The, refuse processing company, isn't it Greenview? It's, Greenview is the.
Is that for everybody?
It is for, citywide, yeah, it's a blanket contract the city has for refuse processing.
Thank you. That's it, I'm done. I promise.
That was a tricky question.
Very tricky question.
I got you.
More unexpected, I'm sure. I just have a question. Your control center operators, you have a vacancy. Is
Yeah.
that, gonna be filled and it's funded in a?
That position, yes, that position is currently funded and I believe the department is actively trying to fill that role.
And how long has that been vacant?
We had 3 people out on leave of absence for workman's comp, so that caused some moves where we were moving some folks into different areas, fire and police. So it's been vacant for, I would say, several months. I don't know the exact 10 now. Yeah. But we are intending on filling it. We just got a few folks back, so we wanted to make sure everybody's in line where they need to be and then we will.
And may I ask, the NOA, local 1033, are the control center operators affected by that?
That is the bulk of the change, yes, or the control center operators.
Okay. And do you know what their, before the NOA, do you know what the salaries were?
Yes, so prior to the MLA, they were, earning a pay grade 21, which in our ordinances is 51 through $56,000 per year. They are now moving, oh, I'm sorry, they were at a grade 8, I'm sorry. I was reading the wrong one, those were the customer services. The control center operators went from $25.94 to $28 per hour.
Okay. And how, I'm sorry, the shifts, what kind of shifts are they all working?
They work all 3 shifts. So first shift is 7 to 4, then the second shift is 7 to 3 rather than 3 to 11, and then 11 to 7.
And how many per shift?
It depends on the shift. There's generally 6 on third shift, there's 7 on days, and then I believe there's 9 on the second shift.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, I guess, have we not discussed the, oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Vargas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I got a question for you, like. Says radio parts and supplies, $138,000. You buy radios every day?
We buy the parts to fix radios, so the batteries, the microphones, the antennas, all the internal components. That's for the vehicles and the handheld radios. And we purchase those for parks, DPW, public property, police, fire, FEMA.
For the whole city.
Yes, sir.
And I see that you also have, auto parts.
Yes, sir.
I don't see no mechanic in this.
Nope. So we have our fire shop does our actual physical mechanic work, but we do have several vehicles in our fleet, so we have a fund to repair those vehicles. We have specialty vehicles as well. We have bucket trucks, table truck, pickup trucks, vans, etc. And so they need various types of maintenance.
So this truck got sent out to which garage to get fixed?
So the bucket truck has to go to a special garage called Fuse out in Connecticut, because it has to be electronically tested due to it going on high voltage lines. So it has to go to a certain specialist. The regular things, tires, brakes, etc., we go to our fire garage above it.
How many of these trucks go home with an
Only
employee?
only mine usually, and then if there is detail work that's being done on the weekend, we might send a radio, keep that unit. But other than that, generally just.
Yes, Counselor Taylor.
I already know the answer to this, but I gotta say it because I've been saying this for 70 years. And I'll ask it, and you can explain. So are we finally getting Annie and Ally?
Councilman, yes, sir, we are, and in fact, they just installed the lines for it today on the building. So that's coming to us and,
So I personally want to thank you because I worked there in 1999 for 15 years. And as I've gone through, this is the fourth director, Manny Vieira, Bill Trink, Callan Arias, and Joe B. And for the last 7 years, finance chair, people that know, I've been asking that question and been getting the runaround. So I know you're brand new and I want to congratulate you. You can do no wrong in my eyes. When Westerly and all these people get Annie now, and just to explain what it is, it's when you call police or fire, you call 911, it goes to Lincoln. Lincoln Barracks picks it up. You tell them, oh, person got shot, 128 Broad Street, get someone out here. Hold on a minute, and transfer it over to police or fire, or both. And then we answer the phones, in communications, they answer the phones. And you say, what's the address now? You get, so I just gave you the effing address, it's 121, what are you doing? Now 911's jumping in, you want to hear from the person. So much time wasted and so many errors because we've got so many streets that are named the same, Burroughs, Barrow, Silver Spring, Silver Lake. And it doesn't take much when someone's screaming in your ear to actually hit the road. You're thinking, oh, this is Silver Lake. I did it myself. I put it Silver Spring. And people went there and it was the wrong address. So this will eliminate that. 911 sends over, they already put in, you got the name, you got the address, you got the phone number, less error. And Dave, I know you were at the meeting when Joe was leaving, and I know you were watching, I called you out on, I know you were watching, but I thank you. Thank you for, that's, people don't realize, I know the people in communications will, but it's, that this is a big step. When Westerly's, I think I don't know, were we the only ones that didn't have it?
we were the last one left.
That's not right. We're the biggest city. We get the most calls. And, I want to thank you for doing that, so. Round of applause for me.
My job.
I probably, I got no question to ask, I see it.
We have to still get through this and we get on the cost, but I just wanted to ask about overtime and callback. Under what circumstance do you have overtime and callback?
So that's actually unfortunately quite frequent for us due to the leaves of absence. So we have to have a minimum man people at each shift to make sure that we can handle the call volumes. And if we have, for example, on third shift, if we fall below 5 people, we have to hold somebody over. That was previously, I'll call somebody back, or if somebody has to volunteer to stay. Because we've had the 3 workman's comps that were quite extensive, long-term situations, and we have 3 people out on non-workman's comp due to absence right now. It becomes an opportunity. I think that investing in the human capital side will help that. It already has. You know, we've seen the fallouts go down just in the last month that I've done it, so we're going to keep pushing that forward. I think if people are happy and feel we're part of the team, that we will.
Okay, if everyone's all right, we can go to the next page. We've been on this page for a very long time.
Okay, on to slide 5. This department's service and supply budgets are overwhelmingly fixed costs. And in the service line item, there is postage under their discretionary and rubbish removals considered a fixed cost for their office. Their office supply budget is approximately $6,000 and has been reduced moderately from the fiscal 2025 budget. They're required to buy some small tool shop supplies to maintain their equipment, which is approximately $3,000 in fiscal year 2026. As the director had discussed earlier, the $138,000 allocation for radio parts and supplies is to maintain and replace equipment for our existing system. It is an older system, which does require more maintenance. Construction maintenance and supplies are replacing the ACO pedestals. Those are those red, tall metal pedestals you'll see on a sidewalk, and the director has a lot of information on what those do and why it's very important to replace them, but we had started a program to replace, I believe, 20 a year, and this is the second or third year of that, program. Additionally, there's a license for quality assurance software. I'm sorry, no. Cable school is also in that line item, so the physical cables they need to purchase annually. They have a allocation for auto parts, as the director alluded to. Those are for their vehicles, which I've learned in my role that bucket trucks are very expensive and problematic. So we need to ensure that we have funding available for those, as that is extremely essential to the operations of this department. There's a larger than we would maybe expect housekeeping supply line item, and that is so that they can sanitize the workstations. All of the, most of these staff are using shared workspaces, and particularly in these where people are subject to cold, they like to make sure everything is nice and sanitized to keep everybody in the office and reduce overtime callback costs. They have a $5,000 allocation for uniforms and wearing apparel so that their staff can be representative of the city while they're on the job. Maintenance and service is one of their largest line items. That's the radio system software support and the Eventide quality assurance software that they utilize to monitor their calls. There's also a repair line item for autos and trucks, so that these would be things where we can't do the repairs in-house, but we need to send them out to a shop for service. Copier and lease maintenance, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. And then telephone is their largest expense, and that is for the public safety staff cell phones. The rest of the city cell phones live in the IT department budget. It's also for internet for all public safety buildings, and the rest of the internet would be in the IT budget.
Sorry, could you tell me about, I'm sorry, what about the telephones and why is that so high?
So that is the telephone is the cost of the public safety, like cell phones, tablets, any sort of mobile devices that they need to do their job. So if you think about like a police vehicle, there's a radio, all sorts of things that need computers, things that need mobile access. They also have cell phones that they're required to work on. It's also the internet access for all of those buildings.
So it's for all public safety,
Correct. Yeah.
including,
Police, fire. Yep.
okay.
Mhm.
Okay, questions? On these? Okay. All right. Any more questions, comments?
I don't have a question.
Yes.
Thank you. Just going back to revenue, where does the $750 come from? I'm just looking back at FY 23, I think we're pretty close to it, but then in 24, it went to $650, and then to 2025, we're below 600. So I guess what factors play into estimating the 750 in revenue?
So the 750 would be if you got all of the bills back from every box. The good news is that the big players all pay, so the ones we typically actually kind of battle with, Providence College, Brown, the hospitals, they all pay. We're talking PC, for example, so it's $20,000 bill for theirs. Some of the ones like convenience stores, mom and pop shops, we send them the bill, but we don't necessarily, they're not on their bill every day. What I will say is that I am gonna be taking this over in our department, with my staff to a more granular degree. So this will be higher than it's been because we're gonna follow up on it and make sure that we have all the master boxes included and that the bills are going to the right places and those type of things. Which the fire department did a great job of getting that, more efficient system developed for that last year. So we're just we're gonna steal shamelessly if we get working on it.
Awesome, thank you.
I'll also add that these bills are sent out in January, so we typically start seeing the revenue arrive in February through the end of the fiscal year. So we don't anticipate that the budget will land at 553,000. We anticipate more revenue will arrive before June.
Thank you.
For reference, the current year we've already collected $555,000.
Okay, with that, are we, yes, Counselor
Is,
Vargas?
thank you. On the telephones,
Yes.
so, a person will carry like. The. We talk about maybe the fire department or the police officer.
Mhm.
So he will carry a radio plus a cell phone.
Yeah.
So we'll carry both of them. Are those both units are connected to the same service that we
No.
asking for, or what is the benefit to have a cell phone?
Well, the cell phone is needed for let's use police, for example, if there's any kind of clandestine work they're doing, narcotics, detectives, etc. They'll need a line for somebody to reach them while they're out in the field. When it comes to the patrol officers, everything requires two-factor authentication now. The body cameras, the equipment they use in the vehicle now for the cybersecurity, they actually have to log in. So they need a city issued phone for that as well. And the reason we use two different systems, Motorola doesn't have a cellular and but we use AT&T FirstNet because it's built for first responders and it has redundancies built in, so God forbid there was an issue with the cell towers going down, the civilian phones wouldn't go through. The AT&T FirstNet take priority. So our responders can be called into work or be given instructions. So it's God forbid the cell phones don't work, you have the radio. If the radios don't work, you have the cell phone. That's kind of the fail safe, if you will, to that degree. But because of the increase in cyber, we have had to issue more phones. And now there's more technology. Now every police cruiser has modems. And so they all have to have internet, mobile internet. The positive to that is that we are working with AT&T, we are working with Cox to lower the bill. That's something I'm actively working on now. And we will see a cost savings next year on that, I hope. But we also have new technology coming online, so we have to make sure everything is in place and go and follow it. But as we get more connected, we become more vulnerable to unfortunately cyber attacks and intrusions, and that's why we need to have a two-factor authentication.
What I see is like, right?
Yes, please.
What I see is that we getting so protected, so connected with technology, but so separate from the community. It's not a connection between the citizens and the departments. You can have 20 phones on you and you see somebody not even say hi, so we might need to walk in the street to talk to the kind of officer. And what we're trying to do in this budget is trying to save money. If one person doesn't need to take a phone home or doesn't need a phone, we don't have to give a phone. And that's what we're trying to find out, how many people really need to go home with a radio, a phone, a car, and this and that. And to have a balance budget.
You know, it's funny, because I just met with the major of administration, Major DeAndre from police today to talk about this. And her and I agreed that we're gonna get this summer, all the phones that are active. And we're going to eliminate the ones we don't need. And there was previous retirees and things of that nature that we are, if they want to keep the phone number, they have to personally switch it to their own way and pay the bill themselves. We're not going to, let people keep phones in perpetuity. So we are aggressively attacking that, because you're right, it's a cost savings and it's not necessary if people aren't giving the function of the phone. So we're actually aggressively attacking that as we speak.
Thank you.
I think we have one more question by Counselor Peterson.
Yeah, sorry, I said I was done, but I wasn't.
You said you were done.
Just wondering if you guys are considering looking into obtaining grants or any sort of federal funding in your department.
Actually, we are. I just met with around EMA recently. We are hoping to utilize some grants in the next couple of years to make modernize the operation there, get more tools and resources, and make it a healthier work environment. So more ergonomics, different things like that, folks that are with me, because they have to sit with them all day. So that is something we're working on, but also it gives us connectivity. The big thing is interoperable connectivity with the state, with FEMA, with mobile command vehicles. To ensure that we can work through any kind of crises or major events and keep the public safe. So,
Everything set? Okay. Thank you so much. Congratulations.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for Annie and Ani or whatever.
Molly, Molly.
Yes. There you go.
Molly, it's called it Molly and Molly.
Yes. It's not listening to this anymore.
you're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What is the name for it? It's
Annie and Al.
Oh,
ANI and ARI.
I'm gonna ask you again next time.
Number and location.
They won't get brought up again.
Thank you.
I'm excited.
Good job, huh?
Okay. So now we have, the chief. We'll swear you in, and anyone else who would like with you at the table.
No.
Thank you. Don't be afraid.
I do. Ask it first.
Before we begin, we're going to, mark as exhibit, whatever we do, exhibit A, the police department, budget presentation, and motion.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Anderball, seconded by Councilor Taylor, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay.
Wonderful. The police department's budget can be found in your budget book on pages 228 to 232. The numbers begin on page 230, which is where I will be referencing as we go through this presentation. I'm joined today by Colonel Officer Perez, the Chief of Police for the City of Providence, and my colleague I thoroughly enjoyed working with. On to slide 2. This is a revenue generating department. Their revenue is generated from fines, penalties, and charges for their services they provide. Fiscal 2026 revenues represent a 10% increase over fiscal year 2025, or $1.3 million. The bulk of this increase is in the fines and penalties percentage of state summons line. It relates to camera revenue for bus-related violations. So last year, the Providence School Department executed a contract with a company called Bus Patrol, where they put cameras on the back of school buses, and they are now ticketing and violating individuals who pass these school buses. The Rhode Island Traffic Tribunal reviews those cases and remits to the City of Providence 12.5% of the ticket revenue that is generated. In the month of March, which is the most recent revenues, we generated $183,000 in revenue, which is a significant pickup over what we were seeing last fiscal year.
I'm sorry, may I ask a question? So is that contract would have been reviewed at the state level somewhere?
It would have been, it was executed directly by PPSD, and I obtained a copy of it. I don't know that if I'm assuming maybe the Commissioner of Education reviewed it, but all of the staff that signed it were Providence Public School District staff.
Is it possible to get a copy of it?
Certainly, yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yes, please, Councilor Anderball.
Thank you. If 12.5% comes to the city, where does the rest of it go?
75% of it goes to the vendor. 12.5% goes to the, yeah, 12.5% goes to the city, and 12.5% goes to the state. However, the administration and city are working to pursue legislation that would change that allocation, so we would get a much larger percentage of the revenue that is generated.
Okay, great.
I'm sorry, is that state ordered allocation of revenue
It
to
is.
75% to the vendor?
Correct.
Okay.
Just to add context, I believe, like the installation was paid by the vendors for the
Yes.
camera. That's why they negotiate these ridiculous contracts up front.
Thank you for that little clarification.
Do we know when the contract expires? Definitely have this happening, but 75% by.
Again, I agree. The contract, I believe, is a 2-year term. I didn't really thoroughly investigate that other than the terms that would impact the city, but I'll be sure to share that with you.
Thank you.
And, you know, again, the term of the contract is certainly relevant, but getting that legislation change is really critical in amending the contract.
And I'm sorry, is that amendment, pending this year?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Additionally, there is, revenue generated from red light cameras, school zone traffic cameras. The Bureau of Crime has
I'm
been
sorry. I'm so sorry. We might as well just deal with it all together.
Certainly.
So what is the net? Because we have the cost for the red light cameras and the school zone traffic cameras. What is the net? This is a net,
It is a net positive, yes.
What is that?
We have got, I believe it's approximately, so the red light camera expense is budgeted at $1.8 million. We have $4.9 million in revenue budgeted. The speed zone camera expense is budgeted at $1.9 million and we have $3.5 million in revenue budgeted. So I could do my mental math is not there, but I can get you a reconciliation if you'd like.
We appreciate that. And can you remind me how much the vendor's getting on, what percentage on the red light and school zone? I know we reviewed the contract.
You know,
I just can't remember.
I don't remember I wasn't involved in the negotiation of that contract, so I don't
Okay,
have those
that's all
terms
right.
in my head. But I'd be happy to look into that.
If you wouldn't mind just reminding us what that is, that would be great. Okay. I'm sorry, continue.
There's a small amount of revenue budgeted for court fees, for officer court fees. There's $120,000 in revenue budgeted for what we call police photocopy, but that's copies of police reports essentially. Miscellaneous revenue at $5,000, which is exactly that, small revenues that come into the department throughout the year. And another large source of revenue is the transfer from the police detail fund. So similar to how we talked about the rescue run fund, the police detail fund functions in the same way. All the revenues and expenditures live in what's known as a special revenue fund, and at the end of the year, our controller's office takes the net of all the revenue minus the expenditures and transfers that into the general fund so that that might help support our operating budget.
Yes, please, Counselor.
Thank you, Ms. Stoll. Two questions on this slide. One is sound camera revenue. I thought that the sound camera legislation had passed last year.
It didn't, and it's pending again this year. However, we held the budget at $100,000, which is the same as last year in the event that it does pass this year.
Okay. And then that's one other question. So about the school zone traffic cameras, does police determine which school zone the traffic cameras go into, or is that determined by DPW or someone else? Like, are you guys making those
So yeah,
decisions?
we participate as well, just we figure out which locations, we post them there. So especially in the school zones, that we usually live about they rules.
Okay. Do they move ever? Because it seems like maybe like,
No, they're there, they stay, like Mount Pleasant one, they move the Turtles Avenue, still there, so yeah.
okay. Have we thought about, getting any more of those since there's schools that are, have we ever thought about getting more school zone cameras since there's schools that aren't covered and significant like crash data at a lot of the schools?
I guess we could, yeah, if we're not getting the activity on some locations, get more, so we think we could, we just haven't had the need.
Certainly, and I will say that I was speaking with our chief operating officer this afternoon about the status of that contract, and the administration is planning on going out to bid for those services at the beginning of fiscal year 2026, even though the existing contract doesn't expire until 7/1 of 2027, 6/30 of 2027, I believe. So we're really trying to get ahead of that contract so we can schedule some favorable terms with the new vendor.
That'd be great. Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, Counselor Vargas.
Thank you very much. On the police red cameras, I recall myself for the school zone and traffic cameras, that some money of these revenue should go back to the communities. How much percentage are coming back? Because I haven't seen a dime coming back from these
So
particular revenue.
the school zone cameras, there's a section in the appropriation ordinance that dedicates 35% of the net revenue after administrative expenses are deducted, is transferred to a special fund for traffic calming and school safety. That is an exercise that happens every year annually. I believe the last time we reviewed the balance of that account, there was about $450,000 available to spend.
Do you know how much it was for this 2024?
I do not know what the net transfer was for 2024, but I could certainly look that up and get that to you.
Thank you. What about the red light cameras?
The red light cameras are not set up in the same way, so the red light cameras were not, related to school traffic fines, and the net revenue stays in the general fund.
If we could have a report on that in the, I'm sorry, not on the school zone,
Mhm.
35%, we would appreciate that, I mean, just a little summary.
Yeah, I can give you a history of the totals by year.
I would appreciate that. Yes, Counselor Anderson.
Two follow-ups on that. I think we all know that traffic safety is one of my top priorities, so. Where does the other 65% go?
The other 65 is retained in the general fund.
Okay, so just goes to.
It just supports general fund operations.
Okay, and then for the 35% that does go to traffic safety and school areas, does that, who then controls that? Is that DPW?
It's the Department of Public Works, yeah, and there's some pretty clear guidelines on how it's to be spent, included in the appropriation ordinance. So, look.
And I think like 2 years ago, we increased that to a higher percentage and then it reverted back to 35. In the fiscal year 2024 budget, I think we increased it. We know why it reverted back, given the like kind of dire need for traffic safety in the city.
I'm not aware of why it particularly reverted back. What I can say is that this is a fund that has tended to grow and not shrink. And so I have yet to see an instance where we need to charge something to this fund and not have sufficient resources available to do so.
Is that a question then for when DPW comes in on why we're sitting on so much funding when there's need? Because I've been told sometimes when I ask for traffic safety that we don't have the funding for it, and so if there is a fund sitting there, like.
Yes, sir. I mean, we could certainly discuss that with DPW when they come forward about how they, make decisions on what is and isn't allocated out of that traffic calming fund. I know that I've been in regular communications with the traffic engineer, and he, if I'm being candid, I think part of it was just lack of knowledge of what's available, and so he's regularly reaching out to me confirming funds are available. So I think that buildup that has happened historically over the years will probably start to decline, especially as more and more people understand that these resources are available for that purpose.
It's just off the day, like the city just released their like Division 0 report and the update to the has like a name that's not in my brain right now, but like the traffic safety report that was put out by planning as a result of like the work that we did on Division 0. So I just want to make sure that like we're having all resources like, literally on the ground to deal with that. So however we can be helpful with that, I'll have to start to point David.
Certainly.
And just for clarification, that 35% can be used for traffic safety, not related to schools, or does it have to be related to schools?
So the exact list of what it can be used for is, traffic studies to analyze areas where speeding is an issue, install speed bumps, raised crosswalk, install speed limits and other traffic calming signage, stripe streets in order to reduce speeding, improve traffic signal functionality, install new signals where appropriate, make neighborhoods and areas near schools more pedestrian friendly and safe, employ the use of speed sleds and other devices to slow traffic, where possible, coordinate with the police department to establish radar posts, improve visibility of crosswalks with new striping and portable crosswalk signs, engage in public outreach campaigns to reduce speeding, and the purchase of market control vehicles.
Thank you so much, and the fact you had that right with you, thank you. Counselor Sanchez.
What is that you're reading off, or what ordinance is that?
This is the appropriation ordinance. It's listed in section 9.
All right, yeah, because I had questions about that, because right before we took office, the police department purchased these massive military-like vehicles using these funds. So I think we might need to take a look at that ordinance, Aaron.
Sell the truck.
You can
Yeah.
notate that.
Yes, are you finished?
I am.
Okay, Counselor Anderson.
And just as a quick note, I'm excited to talk about this with DPW, but I do want to thank Colonel Perez, because you have been such a good partner on all the traffic safety work, particularly on North Main Street, but all across the city. So I just want to say thank you for that. I don't want you to feel attacked by this. You have been a really great partner on all of this.
Okay.
No.
Yes.
Thank you very much. So this question will be to Colonel Perez. So do you know when you transfer this money to different accounts, or who deals with this?
Yeah, we don't check that. That'll be taken automatically by
The speed zone funds? that's what-
Yeah, excuse me.
Yeah, so our controller's office does that as part of the annual audit. They do a report of they look at once we closed our books for fiscal year 2025. They will look at the revenue we generated from all of the, school zone camera expense. They'll look at the expense associated with the school zone cameras. They will take the administrative allowance that's allowed in the ordinance. And then 35% of that is physically transferred into the other fund by that office
Once a year?
once a year.
We can do that every 6 months.
No, it's not possible to do every 6 months because you need to wait until the books are closed. For example, as of today, I don't know what the transfer would be because in the city of Providence and in most municipal governments, we have what's known as a 60-day accrual period, which means if we have a bill that was due as of June 1st, 2025, and that bill is paid in July of 2025, that revenue gets reported back in June. So the office, it is practically impossible really to do this report until those books are done and you know the final revenue number for this year.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, one final question on the red light cameras in the zone, the school zone. Why are there in 25, 26, and 27, it's the same amount, a flat amount, and I'm just wondering why that doesn't vary at all. I mean, because it's a percentage of the tickets, so why is that a flat fee right across the board?
It has to do with the timing of when the contract was ratified and how payments are going to and from the vendor and the timing of the budget being adopted. So what I can say is this contract was ratified probably, I want to say December-ish or so. And the budget needed to be finalized, and at the point of time the budget was not finalized, I was unaware of what year-to-date collections were because the vendor had not yet been remitting our funds to us and we had not yet been paying them for our charges for services. So we felt that the most cautious and responsible thing to do would be to assume the same budgets as fiscal year 2025 and true those up if and, when that revenue starts coming in and our expenditures start going out.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, are we finished with the revenues? We can now go on to the expenditures. Long.
No apologies necessary.
Okay.
Total proposed expenditures for fiscal year 2026 are $118,736,677. That is a $7,220,372 increase over the fiscal year 2025 budget. This department has successfully reduced their supply expense. However, services did have a moderate increase and salaries and benefits did.
Okay, we're gonna have, is it, the other expenditures, go ahead, Counselor.
Thank you. I guess I probably should wait for the next slide of salaries.
Okay, well, we can wait for that then. We'll go right into the salaries and then we can come back if anyone has any questions on that.
First contract.
Service, thank you.
Fiscal year 2025 salaries were $55,223,740. The fiscal year 2026 budget has been adjusted for cost of living increases. That is 4.25% for sworn members and 2.75% for local 1033 bargaining unit members. And non-union staff earning up to $200,000 per year. Step increases total $28,729. There was one position transferred to the IT budget, similar to the Commissioner of Public Safety budget. This was an application project manager who now reports directly to our CIO. So they moved out of the police department into the Department of IT. But they still have a direct relationship with the police department and still process the same services. It's just kind of a different change in the reporting hierarchy. Additionally, they have defunded one vacant biometrics clerk position and a vacant security office park ranger position. Their fiscal year 2025 police academy that is about to be underway does have some costs that linger into fiscal year 2026 budget. That is approximately $2,487,403, bringing us to a total fiscal year 2026 salary of $59,614,644.
Okay, yes, Counselor Sanchez.
Thank you, Joel. How many are in that FY 2025 Police Academy?
How many are gonna be?
Yeah,
It's gonna be 4.
and where are you at in that process?
So with this round, just finished the background checks, we made the selections. And so we should be able to start the academy sometime in June.
So those 40 have been identified and notified, so those gentlemen or folks know that.
Correct. So we have 40 that have been identified and selected. We have another 4 that are alternates. As an example of the last academy, we ended up with like about 49. It was 40 and 9 alternates. We graduated 30. And so we have those alternates just in case people drop. So right now we have 40 and 4.
So just a question on what you just said. So 35 graduated, so that means 14 you didn't make the cut.
No, 14 just for some reason it's not cut off for them, or when the academy starts, the physical activity, the fact that you gotta be there early in the morning. Learning the laws, the rules, it's just something that we feel that it's not for them. We have also individuals that sometimes get offers from other departments, and so they all go there instead, leave out of state. It's just variation of reasons.
So what's the thought process on only doing 4 alternatives this time?
Because of the fact that we were already lost, we started with almost 50, and we already lost 6 people, either, like I said, left them for some reason.
Just out of curiosity, Chief, how many people applied to
We
this?
had about 400 or so on the left, but when we look at other municipalities, they'll put out job postings, and for example, in the game, they had 5 openings, and they had 0 people apply. So the fact that we had 400 people apply says a lot about Providence. And so from there,
Says a lot about you, maybe, right?
Okay. And so we had the physical test, we had the written test, the background checks, and people get eliminated as we move on.
And you said that academy is set to start
Sometime in June. Or the beginning of June.
So I guess my question would be, what is this 2.4 million paying for?
So that 2.4 million is paying for the training that will occur in fiscal year 2026, because if they start the academy in June, there will be training that then continues into the fiscal year 2026. And then that includes their salaries when they become full-time officers for the rest of this fiscal year.
So there's funding that's allocated to the police department for the training that is in June. So this fiscal year?
No, so so in this fiscal year, there was a training budget for the academy. The fiscal year 2025 budget, $572,000 in training available for that same academy. However, because the timeline is shifted, some of those costs need to go into fiscal year 2026. So the fiscal year 2026 budget has $640,000 in salaries in the upcoming fiscal year to continue their training. And then the remainder of those costs are the salaries of the officers when they graduate and then come on the course. I will say that salary of those 20 officers, of those 40 officers, 20 of them are being partially funded by a COPS grant. So the city is responsible for 60% of their salary. And the federal grant will be picking up 40% of the salary, and these salaries have been, the general fund portion of the salary has been adjusted for that. And if you look at the personnel supplement, you can see the grant funded portion of those employees are on page 5 under the non-general funding.
When is that, am I good, Chair?
Yes, please.
How long is that COPS grant for?
The COPS grant, I believe, is for 3 years.
So for 3 years, the federal government will be paying for 40% of 20 police officers for 60%.
40% of the 20 officers, oh, sorry, no.
Yes. Yeah.
Hi, Chair. For the Bank Richards, Deputy Director of Public Safety. So the COPS grant is 3-year grant. And the maximum they allow is $125,000 for each officer over the 3-year period. And the the federal contribution is on a decline over the 3 years. So the first year it's going to be 40% that the feds will contribute, 30% the following year, and then the last year, I think it's 18.6% or something like
that's the way that funding that works out.
And does that include benefits, reimbursement of benefits?
Benefits also pension. Yes.
But that's all subject to 125,000.
All subject to, yes, that's why the way the decline has to go. The most they contribute per officer is 125,000. It's a $2.5 million grant.
And how do you know, I'm sorry, following up.
No, you're good.
Because do we know what it is per year cost for each of these officers?
I can get that for you. What was in the grant?
I mean, anything uncovered by the grant, I guess. I'd like to know, first year.
The only thing that wouldn't be covered in the grant is like a clothing allowance. They're not gonna have longevity, but it covers everything.
We can get you a breakdown of like the total cost of this academy, and then you would like to see what portion is picked up by the grant and what portion is picked up by the
Yes.
general fund for the term of the grant.
That's the problem.
We can work on that.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Will that help?
Yeah, just to confirm, so that is 125,000 per officer over 3 years for 20 officers.
That's correct.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, yes, Councilor Anderson.
Is now the time we can talk also about the salary balance?
Yes, I would say so.
Okay. I have a few questions about the salary section. One is, it looks like for FY 25, we adopted a budget for callback at 1.8 million, but to date, we spent 2.5 on callback. What's going on? It's, 50180.
Yeah, definitely. So, many times, especially last year, we had on a flexible desk, sometimes there's initiatives that occur in certain parts of the city that are unexpected. Give you an example, the other day we had protest, we were expecting about 100 people, 8,000 people showed up. And so we use personnel from the posts that are patrolling that area. They still have to answer calls many times, so it forces us to call people back many times to make sure that we have enough personnel to keep the city safe. That's just an example of one incident. American festival, I would like to mention, like the very big festivals. We have to many times call back and in order to make sure that we have enough personnel to keep the city safe. It's just sometimes it's just unexpected. We're hoping to lower it, but sometimes it's just that's what occurs.
Thank you. And then, two other things.
Yes, please.
When we talked with Chief Silva last night, was that last night? Anyway, sometime, yeah. What is time? They, by changing their staffing, they had reduced their callbacks and overtime. And I think when we chatted last year, that was part of the goal of the police department as well, but it seems like both the salaries have gone up and also the budget for callbacks has gone up. So what are you gonna do about that?
Yeah, definitely.
Just to be super direct.
Yeah, it's a great question. It is tough, and so it's year after year, from
Yeah.
between April all the way to October, our busy months. And so many times during the months, like I said, it's unexpected. It's a fluid job. We could have something occur tomorrow, and at that point, add vacations, you gotta have people that get injured on duty. You gotta add all these different factors that forces us to either, like I said, fill the compost. And so that's one of the reasons. As far as salaries, I think that just it's just the officers on the job, how many people we have, and depending on what type of overtime they do, and it's just the cost is up. We haven't really promoted anybody. We do a promotion of sergeants, lieutenants, captains, and we that will increase the salaries of those officers. And we're topped off on all that. We lost sergeants, with short sergeants. We have some sergeants that are injured. Lieutenants actually in front of the time work right here. So it's just a different, so many different factors that causes us to pull people back, filling our posts that we told we have for years. I'll give you an example. I think that in this year alone, there's 129 people eligible to retire.
Yeah.
If no one retires, we're great. We won't have an issue. But if 50, 60 of them retire, then we have a problem. Because we're gonna have to fill all personnel.
Is part of it,
Yes, please.
is part of the hope that, wow, that's a large number, like, we'll retire, so maybe this question is now done.
And I'll
but-
tell you, 2026 will be 132, so, and in 2027 will be 151 people retired. We had mandatory retirements as well, people just aging out.
So with the 40 that you're adding potentially through the police academy that's happening with students. I was hoping the answer was gonna be that once we do that, that'll help with the callbacks, but it sounds like maybe, but maybe not. If
Correct.
everyone goes.
Correct, 'cause we lose, the department loses about 15 to 30 people a year. I looked at those numbers and it's just, and then on top of it, we're still trying to catch up with years where we didn't have an academy. Between 2010 and 2014, we had no academies. And so we're still trying to catch up with that and officers are, I'm like 54, already almost 32 years of service, and so it's the same. I have about 80 people in my academy that retired. We had two that retired about 2 days ago.
What like level of like years of service or folks?
Sorry?
Sorry, I have like either a really loud voice or a really soft voice,
Yeah.
and there's no in between. At what number of years of service are folks required to retire? Like how many years?
So it's you can age out, there's really no number of years, you just age out, you age out at 65.
Okay.
And for the command staff, I believe 68. I won't be here.
And how many folks are like near that level?
It's how many officers?
Yeah,
are
how
there?
many are
So
like?
this year I have 2
Okay,
that are mandatory, and then next year is 4. And that's on top, I said, like, and then also we have people that are attending who are injured, who are seeing doctors to see what they
yes, please. In the supplement, which again, thank you so much. It's like the best. There are a number of vacant positions, like scattered throughout both in the civilian and in the uniformed. Are there plans to replace all of the folks that are vacant? So we've got like animal control, information, customer service, they're scattered throughout. Are there plans to replace those, or are those gonna be like eased out?
So normally we lost 3 full-time employees, but 3 of them, but the others will be filling out those positions.
Which are the 3 that you're not replacing?
It's the biometrics.
Oh, the ones that.
Yeah.
are in the power sheet. But the rest will be replaced.
Correct.
Some are actually out to bid right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
I'm good for right now, but I'll say.
Yes, Counselor Sanchez.
Thank you. Just building off some of, my colleagues' questions. How many are, active, patrolmen do you have right now?
So we have 404 officers right now, and so we ended last year with 445.
140. What is, what's your goal?
It's a great question. So, I mean, I've been on, like I said, 32 years, and the number has only been the same in the 400s, high 400s, but the city keeps growing. My goal would be to be able to be at that top, where the number we're located at close to 500. If at any point we go over there, we something to talk about. We can need to receive.
I guess what's the part, I guess I could probably go through it here, so I won't ask that.
Yes.
What is, after 20 years of service, any police officer is eligible to retire? Is that like, what, is that the requirement? Is that what gives you 129 eligible officers that are able to?
Yeah,
retire?
the 20 years of service, many constantly retire. They got 20 years, they're ready to either go to another department, another career. Usually I've seen a lot of officers with 25, and that's really a number that is conflict. Some of us like to, be at that number of 32, 33, 34, depending, young enough. But it's hard to tell. Some, I just had an lieutenant who had 20 years of retired, became a professor. And so it's just hard to tell.
I guess just for like the whole team, correct me if I'm wrong. So Providence police officer does 20 years, they can retire, collect pension, and go be a police officer in another city.
Correct. So yeah, we're post certified. So in the state, anyone that's post certified can go to any other municipality. And so yes, we could retire here and go to Johnston, or somewhere else. And the fact is, because we have
Like the state police, we would not go into, stage and perspective, and different picture, but we could definitely go for different.
Madam Chair, can I just comment to the councilman? And the colonel will support this. It's happening more and more. A lot of officers who work a very busy department are leaving to go to other departments. I just heard from someone yesterday. They left Pawtucket and now they're starting their second career as a police officer in Foster. So there's a lot of more going on than it historically did. So you collect two paychecks.
Right, it's just, I'm just speaking out loud, it seems kind of, I mean, obviously it's earned within the parameters that are set by local government, but it seems kind of
And
crazy.
there's
to
no
me.
restriction
So
to
I
say,
guess my question is there some type of like incentive to keep officers?
Yeah, and I think you have
Longer,
the last contract that passed, I think that all everybody's attention. Obviously, because, when we compare our department to, let's say, other municipalities that do a lot less work. And we're getting paid more money, I think that's something that we're contemplating, because it becomes competitive. So I think that the stuff like that, actually, realize that there's a reason why they love the city, they love working in the city. I think that it becomes, is that, feel the beat through the, I think we're there, so.
Madam Chair, can I address the councilman's question?
Please do.
So in the last contract, I forget what year it is, but the contract dips as far as percentage wise. Is it the 23rd year, the 22nd? It dips, so the percentage goes lower. And what the department and the city did was provide for a stipend for those years for the officers to get them to stay, so they don't say, gee, my pension's gonna dip next year, I'm gonna retire now. So there's a stipend for officers who are on the job for those particular years, so they stay.
I remember that, thank you.
Yeah.
Am I good, just to keep, building, out of the current 440 officers, how many would you say live in Providence? Like a guess limit.
That's a great question, but I'll tell you that, out of the 440, I came out in 94. We have a lot of young men and women that grew up in the city, they still live in the city. And so that definitely says a lot about the problem, it's changed, but we can get you the number, so I'll tell you, it still is, some of them still live very. In all areas of the city, so.
Thank you.
Yes. You, Councilor Vargas.
Thank you very much. In your experience, Chief, is any way that you can modify some departments that you don't need a gun or like a police uniform to do the job as an officer? I noticed in different states, cities, for example, to give out like a stop sign ticket, they have a small car. Is dressing as an officer, doesn't carry a gun, could be a civilian, but has the right to pull over a car. It doesn't pull over, so can have the right to call for a cruiser. Have you think about that to save money to the city? Because I see it's like to become a police officer is a great salary to start with. And then every day goes up until they hear 200,000. So, but you're trying to avoid or to save money into the prices that we're going through, we might have to modify it. For example, I'm seeing here like 5 officers are $72,000 just to go get a dog. It's under the animal control.
I'd like to just clarify that those officers are animal control officers. Those are not sworn personnel. Those are members of local union 1033. For those, I do not need those individuals carrying a weapon. That's my state.
So they don't carry weapons? No. Some of them do.
You see those. Animal control.
Animal control officers. Okay,
Yeah.
nice, thank you. So that's a total for you to figure out like.
So putting some research.
That's right. And another question is. Trying to say, out of these, you whole department, how many cars goes out of the city with employees, including you? I know you take your car because you have to be number one to in case of emergency. But besides you, how many cars they go out with employees to the houses at nighttime? Like spending gasoline, fuel, for the cars, such and such and such. Is anything that we can do to avoid these cars to go out or save some money in the long run?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you that definitely it's about 50 in the morning. I know that I can count for 50. There's probably other sergeants, but the job in the specialized units, for example, I'll give you one that is sergeants and internal affairs. If there's a news, question of use of force, they gotta come back to the city, they have to investigate that. They have to respond to take witnesses, and it's not something where they gotta go to the station to pick up a car. They need to respond there immediately, especially if there's a shooting involving an officer. It takes that person, lieutenants, district committees, they have the same responsibilities. We expect them to make sure they respond on scene, and they're expected to do the job, and so that's the reason that they take those cars home. I mean, narcotics, the SWAT team members, when something critical happens, they have to be there at scene. It's more important for the safety of the city. So yeah, there's some positions. I mean, I require you to take and we utilize it in that sense. We make sure that the sergeants control that. But there's so many different needs, and we need to be in a town. We need to be there quick in order to do whatever we've done and function. So.
Thank you, Maria. So in this case, let's say I take the car home, or I'm off the clock. I get a phone call like 3 hours later. How am I going to be clocking back? If I take the car back and I had to go and.
The phone call will come back and you come into it. After you get that phone call, you're coming back, you're getting dressed, and you're probably responding to whatever it is. Say you're already not detectives. And I'll give you an example. We had the homicide of the 7-year-old, unfortunate homicide of the 7-year-old. It was all hands on deck. And everybody, including the commander, was like sitting in the minutes. And it took us 15 hours to put somebody in handcuffs. And that's what matters, I think. It's you start clocking as soon as you open up, you just got to make sure that you respond.
Yes, Councilor Peterson. Yes, right.
In the budget, there is a line item for, I'm gonna ask you for about a few of them, but there's one for contractual services. Let's see if I can find it.
I think that's on the next slide.
Oh.
We're still on the salaries.
Then never mind.
I'll come back to you on that.
Yeah, mine are more about expenditures and stuff.
Oh, okay, that's all right. Well, I think we haven't done, I think we're still on salaries and benefits for. Yes, please.
Thank you. To build on Councilman Santos' question about like the optimal size of the department, it sounded like it would be like optimal would be like 500 people. What is like a comparable size city size, like in Worcester, how many police officers do they have?
So we're the side.
We're better than Worcester.
Yeah. And I
Okay.
think we're close to the number. We're the second largest next to Boston, and so. I'm just not sure as far as what they need and what the needs are with them. I mean,
Or like a different city, like
Yes.
interact with other.
I mean,
places.
you don't see a protest happening in. Sometimes I protest that we have here in the city of Providence. The nightclub activity, a lot of these people are even wish to come to the city of Providence.
Yeah.
And so.
Like in the center of Worcester, any city is comparable. size.
Yeah, I'm just like, how can we do that? So. We need for somewhere close to the company, but I'm not sure that. The Hartford also usually.
Yeah, is that in, like for Hartford and Haven and these other bigger cities? Anything else? No, that's good. I think that was salary question on that.
Salary question.
All right.
Councilor Peterson.
Thank you. With regards to the overtime, the callback, salaries, obviously. You know that we're tasked with trying to figure out how to minimize our expenses as much as possible. Do you have any ideas about potential solutions for decreasing some of these costs?
So one of the things that we've done, I got a compliment the commander. We've been trying to make sure that the patrol division works with the minimum amount of officers that we can. And with that comes some sort of a risk. The safety for the officers and the safety for the city. And so. There's times where we got to speak about it, but I think that's the only way, is just to keep, we'll constantly have to keep an eye on what the need is, but. Things can happen and you may have to come back, I call a search warrant, you may have to. Collect evidence, PCI connectivity photographs, it just depends on what's going on. And I keep bringing the fact of these unexpected protests, and we've had one every other weekend recently. And so I was hoping not to have them, and then we wouldn't need to, fulfill the position, but it's just for me to tell you that realistically, like, we can have something specifically in order to minimize it, we have, and let's keep it in mind, making sure the lieutenants, the commanders, utilize just the minimum amount of people that they need. Providence College, if it's not a big event, if it's raining, we don't need anybody. But if all of a sudden they're packed in the streets, we're gonna have to have officers there, and it requires personnel, and it's unexpected. If Providence College basketball team wins a major basketball game somewhere, then that's gonna be a party of PC, and we have to staff it. And so if they lose, great, let's go to bed, but we gotta make sure. So it's just those things that.
Madam Chair, and I think the Colonel, if you recall, the administration and the Colonel did negotiate lower staffing for certain times of day in the last contract. However, as you point out, there's unexpected incidents that require you to increase the staff, but assuming there wasn't any, you have the ability with the negotiated minimum staffing
Correct.
numbers.
Correct, you do, thank you for that clarifying. Now, the other thing is vacations come and they come around the corner. And, stuff like that, during the summer, we still have to fill couples, because, or if anybody's sick, or goes up sick, that all things into it.
Thank you. I think there's one last question.
Yes,
on this.
go ahead.
Could you explain to me what the alternative work week is? There's it's in the budget now as 80,000, but it's proposed at 109,000. Actually, it was proposed as that in 25 as well.
Yeah, so that's for local 1033 members, and it's for staff that work on an alternative work week. They get a stipend for they receive additional compensation for their shift being, not Monday through Friday.
Any time frame other than Monday through Friday, 8:30 or
Okay, but it's just 1033.
Yes,
So
and that collective bargaining.
okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Counselor Ingersoll.
Thank you. I know we're really hammering home this callback, but I guess the question I have, we're using the phrase unexpected a lot, and given the state of the world right now, I mean, I think we can expect there's gonna be a large volume of protests and mass gatherings over the next fiscal year. And we have callbacks budgeted for $2 million in fiscal year 26, but we've already spent 2.5 in fiscal year 25. So like, are you planning now for the expected protests? And so we're gonna have staffing to adjust to that, or are we gonna come back next year and it's gonna be like, we budgeted for 2 million and it was actually 4 million? Because I think we can expect there's gonna be something,
Correct.
a lot. It's gonna get worse, like, for many years.
Correct.
Yeah.
So.
So are we planning for that? Is the
Yeah,
question?
we have planned for that. I mean, every week, like every Tuesday, we have these meetings and we strategize on how we're going to start something, depending on what the intelligence is. So yeah, we can expect that. And again, it all depends on intelligence. And so if I know for a fact that there's gonna be 500 people show up and they're interested in showing up, and we're gonna stop that, because we only have 30 officers in the city, and they have to have them post. And so, yeah, I could expect to potentially go over this.
And if I may add, there's actually a account code specifically for special events, particularly when we're kind of aware and planning for them. So if you see account code 50065, year-to-date actual expenditures are 836,000 against a budget of 1.4 million. So that is helping kind of offset the averages in the other. Traditionally, from finance perspective, when I look at the callback and overtime budgets, we do our best to try to allocate them across the appropriate buckets, but really I'm looking at them as one category. So I'm looking at account 50060 through 50180 through callback to kind of look in total how they're doing against the budget. Yes.
And can I just ask, what is the overtime training?
That's overtime related to training. like
What is
overtime,
your
like,
overtime related to training?
so.
Yes, qualification for the firearms, and so we qualify, I can't forget, have to qualify once a year. So, yeah, they respond to the range and then make sure the qualifications are, and so. Depending on what the officer's hours are, so if you work days, then we'll make sure that you go through the daytime when you're working. But if you're going, say you work third shift, you're coming back, the days, all night to qualify, so.
Okay. And then one more time on holiday pay. How does that work? We discussed it last night, I think, the holiday pay, so, I think it's a specific question and just, I still didn't follow last night. But if the holiday happens to fall on a weekday, I guess.
Yep, so the holiday, yeah, so if the holiday falls on a weekday, and it's your regularly scheduled, your regular scheduled to work Monday through Friday, and the holiday falls on Wednesday. You, if you work that Wednesday, you are compensated for both the day you work and that holiday. If you opt to take a vacation day, or you are sick for some reason on the holiday, you would receive the sick compensation and the holiday. So that holiday pay is paid, you know, to all members, kind of regardless of whether or not you work. I would say that's kind of typical of a public safety contract and contracts where folks are working, you know, 24 hours and all sorts of shifts. The finance department did some due diligence to see, you know, how long that practice has been in place, and I found documentation as far back as 2015. When the internal auditor at that time, who was working in the public safety division, had attested to the fact that she had always processed it that way. So I'm not aware of change in recent years and how that compensation is treated.
Okay, and we will see that in the CBA.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
And Madam Chair, for
Yes,
records,
go ahead.
if I may, Ms. Lindbergh just provide information, and I can attest that, we did do some diligence and went back in time. And the matter that the internal auditor was speaking to last night, I'm not quite sure if we had that accurate, we do respect her as well. But I can attest that the research determined that this process has been in place since 2008.
So on the police side, I found documentation back to 2015. The fire side, it goes back to 2004. So quite a while.
And we have documentation to support that.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And then differential pay, what is that?
That is working for a different shift, so shift differential, so if you're working the overnights or.
Are we finished with the salary? Oh, no. Big budget.
Yeah, sorry.
Counselor Sanchez.
Just one more, and I believe, there's a reason I think related to ARPA. But can you explain how the salary, is in FY 2023, 11 million, and then in FY, proposed is 48 million?
You sure can, I have a hunch this thing's gonna come up.
I know there's a reason for it.
There
but,
is, yeah, definitely, and I will caution you, when you're looking at salaries, we budget 100% of the regular salaries in account code 50010. However, throughout the year, if an employee discharges a sick day or is paid for a holiday, it does charge the appropriate account code. So the employees aren't receiving additional compensation for that, it's just how the accounts are distributed throughout the year. So actual salaries in 2023 wasn't just the 11 million, it was the 11 plus the sick, plus the vacation and all of those things. However, to answer your original question, that is how we had to rebook the ARPA revenue recovery dollars. So in fiscal year 2023, there was $16.5 million in salaries that were transferred out of the general fund and into the ARPA fund so that we could appropriately record the revenue recovery associated with that. In fiscal year 2024, it was $15.6 million that was transferred out of the general fund and into the ARPA fund for the revenue recovery budget.
Yeah, I guess just to follow up on that, so like the salaries total is actually representative of increases, so salaries have increased from 2023 to 2025 from 32 million to 55 million.
No, you have to add the ARPA money, the money that was transferred to ARPA back to that 32 million in 2023.
Yep, so, and this is just callback and overtime, my analysis didn't include like longevity and all of these things, but in fiscal 2023, actual expenses, not including, alternate work week and longevity and witness fees, was $50 million. 50,039,560. Oh, I'm sorry, that was the total budget. The actuals in 2023 were $48,943,112 between regular salaries and overtime salaries.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we're ready to move on to expenditures. Or services, fixed and
Fixed and discretionary, yeah, so there are a lot of line items, so we are gonna have 3 slides, on this department services and supplies. I will review services first and a few questions on any of these items. The first, discretionary expense, and again, this is put in the discretionary category because when I did the mass account grouping citywide, most of our fees not classified are discretionary. However, in the case of this budget, it's promotional assessment software that is required for an arbitration agreement that the that the police department has, and so that is a required annual expense of $100,000. They also have a small amount of money for postage. Their dues and subscriptions represent accreditation fees they pay annually and professional memberships. Pest control was previously budgeted in this department, but has since moved to the public property budget, so we eliminated it here. They have about $20,000 that's necessary for printing of tickets and forms, printing of forms and ticket rolls. The large fixed costs in this department are more primarily the parking and moving violation vendor contracts, the red light and speed zone camera expenses. Under the discretionary budget, there's $360,000 related to sound camera expenses that would enable the purchase of 36 new sound cameras, which costs $10,000.
I'm sorry, the 660 is what?
660 is the parking and moving violation, so that's the parking tickets.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
They have a amount for refuse processing, that is a fixed cost of $47,000 a year. Under under promotional stamps, they have $35,000, this is to process promotions within the police department. Their professional development expense is $195,500. There's a tremendous amount of training and resources that these officers utilize to maintain their professional credentials, and I'm sure the colonel would delve into that in more detail if you'd like. Tuition expense is $130,000. This is a tuition reimbursement that is required for the CBA with our officers. As is the case with the legal expenditures, so these are similar to fire, when we discussed last night. The police department has a similar provision in their CBA. Miscellaneous professional services is the Providence Center diversion programming. There's also funding in there for a grant match. And then their final fixed cost in the services category is court reporters, which is expensive.
How is the vendor contract on the parking and moving violation?
It's the same vendor as the red light cameras. Well, they're now Modesto, so yes, it's the same company that manages all 3 of those contracts, and that will also be going out to bid. We are looking at speed cameras and stuff.
Have you captured the fees, I mean, the revenue and revenue area?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the parking revenue is actually recorded in the non-departmental budget, so when we went over that budget, when we did the budget overview, they would have been included in those, but the details of that are on page 142. Actually, you're better off looking probably at page 143.
And what is the revenue?
It's called fines and forfeitures. There it is. It's on page 144, top probably quarter of the page. Fines and forfeitures total $4,250,000 in fiscal 25, with a slight increase of $4,762,920 in fiscal year.
I'm sorry, and then one more question. So we have all the sound camera expenses and revenue. How likely is that legislation to pass?
That is not a question I'm,
Okay. I'm just
Why is
wondering
there-
why we're including in the budget at all right now.
You know, I think that it's something that the administration has heard that the community is very interested in, and we wanted to ensure that there be funding available should that legislation pass.
And if it doesn't,
Then we would have an additional $360,000 in the budget.
thank you.
Oh, yeah, yes, that's a good point, Sarah. So actually, the net would be 260,000 because there's $100,000 in revenue, so it would be a $260,000 save to the budget.
Well, we wouldn't have the revenue if we didn't have.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry. Do we need to?
Yes, please, we'll have, yes, thank you. And we already.
So glad I came back up, there's lots of you guys downstairs, but, so there is no legislation that's pending right now. We've worked with the law department, we reviewed the legislation that we had last year, we reviewed what we can currently issue as citations. We want to move forward with the technology currently as is in the current operating standards of both state legislation and the ordinances. We feel like we can issue the citations, there's $360,000, which is a range of whether we want to lease or purchase equipment that would be able to measure sound. And most of the technology that is available right now in the United States, which also operates in Europe, doesn't issue citations. And so there's money in that budget to allow us to contract out, should we issue citations, which is why there's also revenue attached to that. That money would be used to contract with someone like the companies that already issue our citations for red light camera, or moving violations.
Okay, so this is something that, I guess the mayor feels that you can do without council approval.
We would put it in here, we'd obviously, if we contract out for, we would go through the board of contract and supply. And we would work with you all, and we're committed to working with the council on where they would go and how they would be utilized. But we don't believe that we need state legislation right now.
Yes.
What changed between last year and this year that you no longer feel, or you no longer feel need the state legislation?
We worked with other communities who are currently issuing citations to understand what states actually they're using. We were originally going to change, if you remember, we also did block box at the same time. So that was all one piece of legislation, all one bill, that statute that we were trying to change. We don't think that we need to change that statute, just to utilize the technology for a citation that we're already issuing.
Thank you. Okay, yes, please.
A quick question on the miscellaneous professional services, why is there a decrease for, the Providence Center conversion program?
It's not a decrease. That was moving family services out of the police department budget and into the grants budget.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And I think that was at their request for management purposes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions right now, Counselor Peterson?
Thank you. With regards, you have a fixed service cost of $80,000 in legal expenses. Can you tell me how that differs from the police legal funds? Legal expenses?
This is for fee provisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the fee provisions, is just something that's like contract. I think that do with it.
Contractually,
Okay, so how is that different from the police legal fund that they have as a benefit?
yeah, I know.
Let me break it down. No, that's insurance. Yes, and so that's an insurance payment?
Yeah, that's under the different code. This, the one you're looking at there, the 80,000 gets paid directly to Dodge. Police units.
And, okay, and what does that cover?
Very similar to what fire does, the health and wellness, their legal services and employee assistance program.
Okay, just to push a little further, legal services for what? Like, should they get sued?
That's the union.
Is that
That
what it
was paid directly to the union, and, I know there was a question before of what do they use it for, but that is something that,
Okay.
I know.
So Then I guess just to push a little more, what's the police legal fund insurance do? Nothing.
I think it protects the officers
Okay.
in case they're involved in a suit or something, and a lawsuit. But, and do you know?
I don't know, I have to read the language in the contract, it doesn't jump out at me, but
Yeah.
we can get that.
I appreciate it. My follow-up question to all of that. How does the administration budget for potential settlements? Like, we had a big one that happened last year. My concern is that, God forbid, something like that should happen again. How do we budget for something like that?
So the budget for claims damages is in the law department budget. However, annually, at the end of the fiscal year, the finance department works with the controllers of office and the law department to do what's known as the legal accrual, which is a requirement of all municipalities. And so what we do is we sit down with the solicitor's office, they prepare a very confidential list of current cases. They estimate our exposure for those cases. We provide that schedule to our auditors, and we are required to have the amount of dollars on that schedule in reserve in what's known as our legal accrual fund. And so that is the fund that we are often using to pay out these cases. And to date, I can't recall a large case that did not have some amount set aside in that fund at that time. So it is a pretty good system.
And it should be noted, Councilman, that schedule is confidential to the auditors, because otherwise we will be disclosing at some point in the case what we thought our exposure would be, and that would be counterproductive. to-
Yeah,
so-
okay. Just to, we are budgeting for, God forbid, a
We
situation.
most certainly-
Okay.
we most certainly.
Okay.
That's right, Councilor Vargas.
Question, when we have these type of cases, do we pay the full amount, or we have a payment plan to pay the loss?
If I may, so if there's a case where the attorneys in the office, there's a vetting process. And then we would bring it to the claims and pending suits committee with a recommendation as to what we think the value is of the case and what we've negotiated that number down. And if the claims committee approves it, it's processed and paid. If the claims committee does not, then we may have to either try the case or go back to the other side to continue to negotiate. But it's vetted in our office, and it's vetted before the claims committee before any payments are made.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Vargas.
Thank you. The flops cameras, how many cameras do we have so far?
60.
60? And those cameras creating any revenue?
No, just more as usual investigations.
How many of those cameras can we use for dumping? Because we get a lot of dump in the city and nobody's doing anything, not even the police department.
Yeah, so we use them if you say you provide a plate, or say a witness or complaint, sees a plate, we can run it through Flock and see if we can obviously follow up on it. So yeah, they're definitely useful, very useful. So if that was the case, we can use all of them for that, depending on what tool we have. It goes to the point where you can actually search on there and description of the vehicles if need be. So it's really nice. It can be, so.
The reason I'm saying this, Chief, is because we having a lot of dump in the city. If the cameras are, we paying for anyway, we should use them for anything. And have a benefit of the camera.
We actually place those cameras in strategic locations, but I know exactly that we have used other type of equipments for those type of reasons, and actually the location that we mentioned, we put one up before at that location, so. Not being one of those, actually, you had told me, and we had intelligence go out there and we place one, so. But the flock is placed strategically, we can on main streets and things.
Councilor Sanchez.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up question. What's the current cost associated to the flood cameras? in FY 25, and then what it would be that proposed cost in FY 26.
Yeah, something, $170,000 a year, however, we have not, paid them dime yet because they haven't satisfied all the conditions of the contract. For when the original contract was, signed and the points where the cameras were gonna be, there were issues with, the solar, part on the pole, and there were also issues with some of the poles they wanted to put the cameras on that the city did not own them, and we had to go through DOT's permit.
So when's, I guess, the next estimated time that the city will have to pay them?
But it can see the project,
Which is, or what?
it's still being held up now with permitting from DOT and also,
Yeah, so we had a lot of, we won't. Get myself in.
I think we need to swear you in. Thank you for coming and sharing it. You share with the treasury that to swear your body is the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the
Yes, I-
truth. It's statement in the title for the office.
So when we wanted to install, we said only solar power. And when they came back to us to where we want the general area, where we want our own cameras, they were telling us that it needs to be electricity. And all like that was just mentioned, they wanted to put them on a pole. They wanted to make their job easier through the installation. And then we said, no, you can't do that. You have to put them in somewhere where they have sunlight so that they're powered by solar. So they've been in discrepancy to move these around, so that it benefits us instead of making the job easier. So that's what the whole thing is.
So just to, thank you, Deputy, Chief, for that. So I guess, what I'm getting to is like, once we do have to pay them, like, where is that money coming from and where is that reflected in the budget?
under, maintenance and service, 452911.
It's on the third, on the one on page 7.
So I guess, just to follow up slightly more on that, is that a contract that will come before this committee?
And that's what we sign the contract that's already placed with the people.
Yeah.
What, that was years ago?
A couple of years ago. We're in year 3 of it.
Did that come before a finance committee, whether it was our term or the term before?
Yes, I believe that.
Do you know if it was there an hour term or?
It was in this term. There was a contract that was entered into in 2022, as Evelyn mentioned. We renegotiated it, it went to the board of contract and supply, and it was passed. The first year was 2023. That we're in year 3.
And I believe that's 2 off.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Vargas.
Thank you. So these 60 cameras, they can provide revenue for it if you want to. Because if we catch somebody dumping, you can get them a violation and that will be revenue for.
Awesome. So the way that those cameras work, they're just license plate readers on the main streets. They don't continually record, they're only activated when a car goes by. So if there was a person that saw a car doing some illegal dumping, they would certainly help us in the investigation of tracking down that person. Not only do you don't only need the license plate, you can just get a description of a car, maybe a dent, bumper sticker, any kind of a trailer hitch, anything like that. We can use the technology that license plate reader and Flock has to track down that car. So they're very helpful in investigations, although they're not constantly recorded if there's no traffic.
Thank you.
Should we continue with the page 6? I'm sorry, this is, we have a lot of questions. Oh, yeah, I'm just being reminded that we usually do police and fire one night. I can't even imagine. It's a one night one. I'm glad we divided, I guess.
Okay, well, we're continuing on to slide 6. There are quite a few supplies in the police department, so I have to break this into 2 slides. Not wanting to make it too small. First up is $72,000 in their discretionary line item. This is for in-vehicle radio replacements. Next up is medical and chemical lab supplies. Those are supplies for the BCI unit. Office supplies are fairly straightforward, but this is a very large department, so they do require a lot of office supplies. There's a small increase to animal food this year. This is food for animals that are at the Providence Animal Shelter. Account 54105, a canine unit supplies is a little bit misleading. The bulk of these costs are veterinary fees associated with animal control. However, there is $20,000 that is attributable specifically to the canine unit. The equestrian account is allocated for food, shavings, supplements, and equipment. The supplies, equestrian unit supplies are wood shavings and hay. And then under the equestrian unit professional care, that would include veterinary services or farriers or shoeing for the horses as necessary. Guns and ammunition are budgeted at $186,395. This covers the cost of the annual qualification exam as well as qualification for the academy. Lubricants are budgeted at $18,000 and they are required for maintaining vehicles in the fleet of the police department. Same note on auto parts, those are $439,500 and a modest $50,000 decrease under the fiscal 2025 budget. Auto parts are budgeted at $4,000, or sorry, food is budgeted at $4,000. This is food for people who are being detained, so we need to have food for those individuals while they are there. Fuel is considered a fixed cost, so that is fuel for the building. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry, the boats. Yes, thank you, Colonel. You're right. That is fuel for the boats.
And why is that fixed?
Fuel in general is considered kind of a fixed cost.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if we had a contract to provide the fuel, the boat fuel, or?
Not the boat fuel specifically, but we do have a contract for, a fuel provider for the city of Providence. There's a blanket contract there.
Okay.
Housekeeping supplies are cleaning materials for this department. Those are budgeted at $20,000. Program supplies represent community engagement bureau supplies. And then their general supplies line item is emergency response supplies. So that would be tourniquets, barrier tapes, batteries, cones, and splits.
Yeah, yes, we're a couple, so Counselor Interbon and Counselor Peters.
Just a quick question. So under the equestrian accounts, it looks like we've gone down to 10,000 for food shaving supplements, equipment, and also wood shavings and hay. I guess my 2 questions are, what's the difference between shavings and wood shavings? And then also, do we have fewer horses? Like what's going down? Sorry.
So wood shavings is like, it's not different. It's just shavings that are made of wood. It's
It's
like,
different
it's
shavings, okay.
yeah, it's just like what you would envision in a horse stall, right?
Yeah.
Shavings, right? Quite frankly, I'm not quite sure why they break out hay from regular food. That was a question I had myself. As someone who has owned horses, I know they eat things other than hay, so I have a hunch this is just like an accounting determination that was made probably years ago that we've stuck with over,
Yeah.
One thing to keep in mind when we look at these account codes and descriptions is they were built in 2003. And so sometimes things that we thought were really important to allocate in 2003, we now are finding are maybe not necessarily getting that granular level of detail in 2025. But really the reason for the decrease was when we were looking at, again, when we went through budgets, one of the analysis we did was like actual spend, trends and actual spend, looking at what has been determined essential in this fiscal year now, living in the moment we're in and trying to reduce small things where we can. These were some of the line items where we felt we could reduce without harming the horses and the amount of staff.
Can I ask a quick follow-up at the risk of having my colleagues be mad at me? Why do we need the horses? And I say this as someone who, like, former brother-in-law rode a horse for the York police, like, I'm not like anti-police for the, horse, but like, what is the value add? Because horses are really expensive.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing
I think we're gonna throw hands later.
Yeah, I think the answer of that is, we get requests about horses daily,
Yeah.
not just from community members, but also, as you mentioned, from your own colleagues, being present at certain events. It's just, the public relations is,
They're mainly
it's,
the public relations tool.
uh,
They're mainly
Yeah,
like public relations.
there's that, and it's just,
How many we have?
they also go, yeah, they also go on patrol in certain areas of the city. They go around this area that they can get in the park themselves, they ride around, yeah, it's all that, it's, being honest, as I can remember, so it's, actually, it used to be a lot more active, they used to come down with us to the festivals and parades. But we're afraid that they could actually, that's about it too, so it's just, but they do go on patrol, and they issue summonses and things of that nature. Yeah.
I said addition to the horse issuing something,
Yeah.
is that correct? I'm sorry.
Yes,
I can also add that Wendy Nielsen at Parks loves them because, well, because they control the parks for her. And, it's a big asset to her.
And how many horses do we have?
We got 5, we just got one new one from, it was actually donated to us by Wisdom, Justice. Yeah, so we have, it's a Prince, Thunder, Chief, Charlie, and Justice.
Is there a high, sorry, I'm really afraid Shelley's gonna be mad, but is there a high insurance cost associated with keeping the horses? 'Cause I think for private ownership of horses, the insurance cost is like that.
Sure.
We're self-insured.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there's no real insurance, you know, I mean, we would be responsible for any damages, I guess, the cost, but the solicitor may know, but I'm not aware of a tremendous amount of damage.
Yeah, and I'm not aware of a recent claim or lawsuit
Okay.
relative to, the horse.
I like, every sure that one of the festivals on time and involvement with the horse, and the officer made the application,
Okay.
yeah, so. Legal festival. Yes.
Isn't it true, Colonel, that they're donated, the horses are donated? We
A lot, yes,
have-
that's correct, yeah, they donated, yeah, we haven't purchased a horse that I can remember, people love to purchase them because they like to name themselves.
Okay.
About 5,000, sometimes 10,000, depending.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Councilor Peterson, thank you, you had a question about horses.
Not about horses. The horses are a big draw, I think, as a person who likes to do a lot of things in the community with children. One of the main attractions are the horses that come through, and it really just sets a tone of like playfulness and just like a very open opportunity for kids to engage in a very different way. So I very much support the horses in our budget.
I was just
Putting it
doing
out
my
there.
job, asking the question, making sure there wasn't something.
My question is actually with regards to the community engagement supplies. There's a $30,000 reduction there. But what I wanted to do was understand a little bit more about what the Community Engagement Bureau actually does.
Yeah, so we've had this conversation, as they responded, I'll tell you that they responded to at least 100 plus visits, where schools, they set it out, community events, parades, community forums, time watch meetings, they set that up, and different summer initiatives, annual events like the National Night Out, they set that up, trunk or treat, Thanksgiving, turkey giveaway. So it's some amount of events that they organize and set up. They work closely with the district commanders as well. District commanders are the lieutenants that have
Yeah.
certain specific areas of responsibility.
So through that, I'm sorry, can I ask another
Yes,
question?
go ahead.
So through that funding, those supplies, are they also donating to trunk or treat, turkeys and things of that nature? And all that stuff?
Yeah, they said all that, the categories, we use a lot of the explorers also, command assistance, so I advise them to keep their food, so
Yeah.
pizza for the kids that are responding, that's all paid through them. So.
Okay, so, I really support your community engagement program. I think it's one of the best things that you guys, have because of the fact that, the engagement is just at a different level. It's just, that's exactly what it is. And, I support those endeavors and those efforts. I guess I'm just wondering why such a big cut when they do so much more? I mean, it's not just turkey giveaways and candy and all those things, but there's so much more. Do you provide stipends to the explorers or anything through this or?
No, not that I know of.
No,
They just, part of the program to go and this and or career and justice.
is there anything from this department or is there anything additional that this department could actually do to help support the police department in a different way? Outside of just what they're doing, they're doing a lot already, or how many officers are kind of there?
Yeah, so now we have the director and we have a community engagement specialist, and so they work closely with the district communities. Depending on what events, as I mentioned, are going on in the districts, they handle, they organize them. Kind of answer to the request. You have to be a constituent or a principal or a high school, and you want to have them for community about bullying or speak about whatever it may be, they said that. So,
Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Sanchez.
Just a quick comment slash question, regarding the community relations unit. I know we've talked about this in the past, Chief, and, I don't think I've thanked you and the second in command here for coming. Definitely, you guys don't have a easy job, but I know you guys definitely try your best. And I'm never gonna tell you how to do your job, of course. But one of my things that I brought up to you, and it's a concern of mine, and I've heard it through different community members, is that there's no assigned officers to the community relations unit, where in contrast, at least my experience with North Providence, Pawtucket, it's specific same faces that are part that. I know I think one of the reasons that you mentioned is to get more officers out to different events and whatnot. But I'm specifically speaking that these community relations units and other municipalities and towns around us mostly respond to vacate orders around our unhoused neighbors. And we don't have those strong relationships here in Providence, being as honest as possible.
yeah, sure.
So whether that's in that unit or a different unit, what are your thoughts on having specific members of the police force that interact with I guess not all of our unhoused neighbors, but in those instances where folks gotta move or relocated?
Yeah, I understand it. So, I mean, I think that community policing, that philosophy is something that needs to be embraced by the whole department. And so years ago, if we go back, I was a member of the community police unit. There was 12 of us, and we were deployed to different areas of the city. I happened to be South Providence. And so when I was out, I was not working. It was the post officer that handled it. They didn't know who he was, and he happens to be the officer that's going to respond to those calls. And so in my mindset, I think the commander and the command staff would feel that it should be embraced by every officer when we think about community policing. And so that's the reason that I feel that when you have community engagement specialists or director, they should be utilizing the officers that work those areas where we have those issues. So that, for example, if they need to respond to a location, is that officer that works in the area responding there, not the officer that is assigned to the community police unit who works Monday through Friday. And he's going to Silver Lake, he's going to the east side, he's going downtown because he's the community police guy or over, right? It's gotta be the officer, in my opinion, that works there. So the reason why I feel that the community specialists and the directors should work with the district commanders to identify officers in those districts, because they get a call and stay there for years. And those are the ones that should be making those relationships. And it's a work in progress because many times, we have a captain who actually responsible in campus per se, and he's very knowledgeable. He also understands what was expected, the treatment, professionalism, constitutionally, how to handle that. But I think he selects who responds with him. And I think that works a lot better than sending an officer that's just part of the community policing. And so that's why I think we use everyone, depending on the areas. I don't know if that explains it.
No, it's a difficult conversation. I don't think anything's really right or wrong. I guess just a quick question regarding the conversation. Vacate orders, I think the past year or so were signed by you, and now they're being found by Michael Stevens, who is the director of community engagement. Why is that?
Yeah, so I was out, if he did, he probably did it, he could have did it this past week, but I signed them all usually.
Oh, so you were out?
Yeah, I was out,
Sorry,
yeah, it's not personal, yeah, so.
Yes, Councilor Peterson.
Switching things up a little bit.
Sure.
You guys had a gala this past week.
Sure.
It was beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Was happy to be able to go, even if it was just for a few moments. May I ask how much you spent on this gala?
So it was part of the Community Police Foundation. It's a foundation that their mission is to, it was set up years ago before I was born. And so the mission is to build relationships. And so there was some funds in there. And about a year ago, we came up with the idea to try and build those funds, to use those funds. So I don't know yet how much, as far as how much I spent, I know that it was close. If you use the Omni and if you just picture for 500 individuals, how much it costs, based on meals, close to 60,000.
Okay.
But that all came from the funds. And but the support that we got from it, because you knew you were there, it was a sold out event. We probably didn't make much, but enough to keep what we had. But the best thing is that I was able to have a night where community members were recognized. Officer morale was built, and also some officers were recognized, but it was all focused on relationships, trust, and legitimizing the department. I think that was accomplished.
I commend you for doing that. I think that those are nice community builders, and I'm sure that the officers enjoyed just a night out, not necessarily having to be officers, and but also meeting their each other's spouses and things like that.
Yes.
The money earned, what are you guys gonna use it for?
So we've been using whatever money's in response prior when my predecessor was here. I would love to be able to build more funds to help out. And I know this question was coming, there's not much in there, but it's mostly for like nonprofits and things of that nature.
Yeah.
We have the money to do payment services, adoption, Rhode Island, you name it. So it's mostly mentoring kids. I would like to be able to change the mission for so at least depending on what it is, it's just a work in progress. But right now, it's just for nonprofits.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have just one follow-up and then I think I'm done. I want to preface this by saying that I think all of the work that you guys do is phenomenal. I really commend the support that you've given me in my ward. I know that perhaps sometimes we don't necessarily get a chance to say, hey, you did a great job helping me with XYZ situation. And most of the time when I'm actually calling, it's actually as a result of some feedback from a constituent, or I got something going on in a very specific area in my neighborhood and I need your help. One of the things that I think is important to note though, is that when my community members come to meetings, and I say this because of where we're at and what we're asking our community to do, or what the proposal is to the request of the community, yet again in this term. One of the things that is a response to all of the things that are happening is I'm being asked to raise my taxes again, cut my dollar up one more time. But I don't exactly get the services that I'm looking for. And I'm gonna ask this of the larger services, the same question. I'm gonna ask the DPW, et cetera, et cetera. So whoever's watching. But one of the big things that is always said is when I call, nobody comes. The issues that are here, they're not exactly being addressed. We're told to consistently call the non-emergency line, but I see no result. Sometimes it's a dispatcher making a decision, or sometimes it's a police officer never really coming, or people not seeing that anything, right? So one of the things that I've kind of prided myself on is being able to find ways to reiterate that information that is relayed by our neighbors, because we're so accessible and providing these opportunities for feedback and community engagement. And I wanted to just express that in my particular neighborhood, outside of the issues that are happening in one specific area, one of the things that is mostly asked for is just more patrol. It's a consistent ask of like, can you help us with the traffic calming measures? Because these people are just not listening to speed limits or adhering to the laws. Can you make sure, before you used to have patrols, that people just kind of driving through streets, and we don't see that anymore. And in one of the goals that you guys put into your budget summary, it says that, you know, one of the goals that you have for ongoing metrics and performance measures, it's to deter traffic related violations and crime through increased presence, visible to the community and intelligence led policing. My question, after that really long dissertation, is, are you guys committing to increasing your presence in the community more by doing some more patrolling? Or what is it that you're going to be doing to meet this actual metric? Because it's important to my community members.
100%, and I think you and I have had these conversations, and I was able to make that connection between yourself and the major, the commander. And so we have been in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
We've been in every other neighborhood, but I'll tell you that beyond major crime, we have remained committed to addressing public health concerns. One of the biggest things that we did was create a community response team. And they're involved in targeting illegal TVs or road vehicles, reckless driving, addressing graffiti, street level narcotics activity, and larcenies. They assisted 268 arrests for the year in 2024. On top of that, the Immigration Bureau, we mentioned, Traffic Division responded to about 4,344 vehicle accidents, 4,743 summonses. In the east side, maybe actually because of the fatalities that we've had with church posted individuals there. So we're in the community, it's just that, you know, many times when, depending on what it is, if a call's not coming in, it's a failure on our side. And if somebody's calling, we respond, we gotta research that, we gotta check with dispatch, we gotta figure out who didn't respond, how did the call come in. I've had calls where people say they called 10 times, we find out that they never called or they called once.
That's true.
And so it's important for us to follow through, but put it this way, we have an open door. You have my number, I think you have the number of every lieutenant and captain and this.
Pretty sure I do.
Yeah, we need to address it, but as far as meeting those goals, I think we're gonna go beyond, especially for last year. I actually had some presentations to give. Violent crime increased by 10% citywide. Violent crimes involving firearms showed by 27%. Shooting victims dropped from 54 in 23 to 33 in 24, which is a 39% increase. Property crime by 7%. We see 325 illegal firearms last year. We're about 107 year to date, and we see 17 last week alone. And so the work is being done. It's just that, you mentioned pullback and overtime. It's just that we're working with what we have, and we'll continue to do so.
Thank you, friends.
Okay, we have not done the last stage. Have we not?
We have not needed there yet.
Oh my God.
Are we ready?
We're ready. Can we get through that quickly, do you think? I think, maybe. Yes.
I can be quick.
Okay.
Quick till we're all starving.
Excellent. The remaining supplies of this budget are largely in the discretionary category, starting with tires, which again are self-explanatory. There's a large allocation for uniforms and wearing apparel. This not only includes replacement uniforms, but also uniform allowance, which is required by the collective bargaining agreement. Miscellaneous materials and supplies are $3,600. Those are cameras with accessories for the BCI units. Background check expenses are approximately $10,000. Rental of equipment is the police motorcycle lease, so that is a contractual obligation, but again, most of the rentals in the city kind of reside in the ACT department and they are somewhat flexible. So that account in general was grouped as discretionary. Rentals not classified are the portable toilets for the firing range. Repairs to equipment are $30,000. This is security costs for building security and alarms. It's also various equipment repairs in the department. Maintenance and service is the largest line item in this category. It's for body worn camera expense, APHIS software, and other police specific software licenses. Repairs to autos and trucks, again, are self-explanatory, as is copier maintenance. Exterior maintenance of vehicles, $60,000 is the car wash expense for the police vehicles. And the telephone, fixed cost of $20,000, 400 is the language line that's utilized for translation, as well as costs that the department incurs obtaining copies of cell phone records.
Okay, but the only question on this slide of this particular page is how is the clothing, the apparel budget going down when you have new recruits?
The apparel was purchased for them in this state,
Okay,
I believe.
yeah.
Any one quick question?
Yes.
What is causing the 87,000 increase for maintenance and service?
If you recall in yesterday's presentation, there was a reduction of 165,000 in their software line. That is because we've transferred a lot of expenses into this line.
Okay, thank you.
And this is a terrible question to ask at the end of the night, but, we don't have to belabor it too much, but I'm looking at your parking enforcement. I should have mentioned this when we were doing salaries, but we have 25 parking officers, enforcement officers. Is there a direct correlation? In other words, do we know the revenue we are collecting through each 25?
Oh, that is not I don't have a per officer revenue collected report. I think we could, is that?
So that, the parking fee, is tailored to the parking enforcement and the revenue that Sports Herman, he said that he had it in. Department.
Yeah, so it's in the non-departmental budget, but again, I don't have a direct, this officer has generated this.
No, I'm not even looking for per officer, I'm looking for total, only because I think that everyone, all the country, that there is not enough parking. We talk about it every year, in every book. And so I am wondering, have we increased that this year, or have we become more efficient and effective in our parking enforcement? And how is everyone getting to their areas?
So I do know that our parking revenue has increased this year, and it's partially due to the new fines and fee structure. So anything that, the new fines and fees were included in that budget. Those revenues are on page 2. So parking, this is a little tricky. So when we budgeted, we did budget all of the fines and forfeitures, including parking lumped together in the 4.25 million. I can show that year-to-date revenue is 1.7 million on parking revenue. That can be found on page 144 in the top quarter of the page.
Yeah.
Last year, parking tickets resulted in $3 million in revenue. And the year before it was 2.1. So we are on a trend of upward collections and revenue related to parking.
All right, and then how many do we have per shift, and how many shifts are there?
And I was thinking of those numbers. We have 3 shifts, and I was just thinking that we just put it out the bid again. We had hired 4, and I think that we lost some. So it's a position where people will stay open. But I can get you a number exactly of how many we have total.
Okay.
That's the number I don't remember.
That's okay, I would just like some information
Sure.
on what the shifts are, how many per shift, and how they get around, because I know that a lot of them are dropped off. But we also need, I want to know how to part. Just so they can get a couple more territory. But that's it.
Yeah.
Do we have anything else? Yes. Now we can have this.
Where's our firing range, and why do we need a $17,000 portable toilet for it?
It's instituted, and this is out in the woods. It's and it's used constantly. When we go for qualifications or the SWAT team.
So it's like the state municipal firing?
No.
Oh, is that our own?
It's just our own. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's by the Providence water.
Yeah, like the Providence water. Yeah.
So there's no building there?
There's no, just it's a trailer pretty much here for the training, and so officers go there, we train about use of force. They train, the rifle team trains there, we train there twice a year. And then also if officers need to get refreshers, they go down there, if you get no duty weapon, you go down there to train them as well. So, but it's out in the woods, I mean, literally, there's a dirt road.
Yeah, I when I toured Providence water, I thought by there.
And a lot of cities doesn't have. You say you have it.
So is this an expense that we do every year or?
It's an annual expense, and again, I think to the constable on this point. Installing septic and it would be cost prohibitive to install a bathroom and maintain a bathroom here, spending $17,000 a year for a portable maintained restroom is probably the most cost effective way to do it.
Have you been there before?
Yeah, when I went to Providence Water, but Providence, I don't know if there's a happened that was since then.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Really appreciate you guys for the city.
Thank you very much.
And lasting this for 3 hours.
I didn't even realize it.
Your team that was brought. We appreciate everything. Thank you.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Anderson, seconded by Councilor Sanchez, all in favor, all opposed.